I was 21 years old, a college student, and I desperately needed a way to pay for my classes. The costs were piling up, and I really did not want to ask my family for more money. I had talked to everyone I knew, asking if they could suggest any easy work. Fortunately, a friend of mine had a part-time job at a pharmacy. She said the work was simple, mostly just checking out customers. She offered to recommend me to her boss, and soon enough, an interview was set up. The pharmacy itself was located right in the middle of a busy community in Toronto. It was an older place, tucked away near Bathurst and Wilson, owned by an elderly man and his family. I remember going in for the interview. I tried to look presentable, but also casual, wearing an orange shirt, a black skirt, and flip-flops. The owner greeted me warmly when I walked inside. He led me to his small office at the back of the store for the interview. As I looked around, I could see the pharmacy was more than just a place to get medicine. The front part was like a mini convenience store, selling everyday items. My main job, he explained, would be handling the checkout for that section. But, he added, if no one else was free, I would also help with the medications. I got the job, which was a huge relief. My training was scheduled for the following week, and my friend was going to show me the ropes for 2 days. The training went well. My friend was patient and thorough, and I quickly picked up on everything. After those 2 days, she told me I was ready to handle things on my own. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. My first day alone was a Wednesday. I arrived bright and early, feeling a bit anxious. This time, my friend would not be there. It would just be me at the till, and the owner handling the pharmacy side. To check in, I had to go to the office at the very back of the store. I started my shift, and for the first 30 minutes or so, everything felt normal. Customers came and went. I managed the till, and the quiet rhythm of the store settled in. Then, things started to change. I noticed the owner looking at me. His gaze lingered for a moment before he called me over to the office. We started talking. He looked at my face and asked about my skin. I had some acne at the time, and I felt a little self-conscious. He told me he had something he wanted to give me later. I just said, okay, trying to be polite and returned to my register because another customer had arrived. After checking out the customer, I walked back to the office. The owner was there, holding a small tube. He handed it to me. It was cortisone cream. He explained how to use it, describing the proper application and how it would help with my skin issues. I thanked him, but I felt a strange pause in the air, as if he had more to say. He then asked me to lean down. He was a few inches shorter than me, and I did as he asked, tilting my head slightly. Suddenly, he grabbed me. It felt like he was pulling me in for a hug, but then he kissed me on the cheek. I froze. I was completely shocked. My friend had described the owner as a friendly man, someone who was kind to his employees. But this level of friendliness felt very unusual to me. I stood there, unsure of what to do. I remember thinking, kissing on the cheek, is that normal? At that moment, I honestly thought maybe it was, and I just wasn't used to it. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. He kept packing little kisses on my cheek. It went on for too long, and I started to feel deeply uncomfortable. I tried to pull back gently at first, but he did not let go. I was still frozen, my body feeling heavy and unresponsive. Just then, like a miracle, the front door chimed. Someone had walked into the store. He immediately pushed me away. "Somebody's here," he said, almost sounding annoyed, as if I was the one who had caused the situation or initiated the contact. His tone was dismissive, and it made me feel even more confused and guilty. I stumbled back to the till, my hands shaking slightly. The cortisone cream tube was still clutched tightly in my hand. My heart pounded against my ribs. I looked around, desperately searching for cameras. There were 2 cameras visible, I noticed, but they were both pointed towards the pharmacy section. Neither of them faced the office. There was no way to get any proof of what had just happened. I kept wondering if it was real. Had it truly happened? Should I report it? Was it harassment? The questions swirled in my mind. I decided I needed to get some evidence. I thought about calling my friend, keeping her on the phone, hoping she would answer. She did not. So, I decided to try an audio recording. I had my phone in my pocket, and I quickly started the voice recorder. The owner called me to the back office again. My heart hammered. I was ready, just praying that my phone would not stop recording. I knew I had very little memory left on it. I stopped just inside the doorway of the office, trying to stay within the range of the store's cameras, however limited that might be. He seemed frustrated by my hesitation. He reached out and pulled me further into the office, away from the door, away from any potential camera angles. He resumed what he had been doing. I waited a few seconds, trying to push away again, but my body felt completely frozen. I knew this was not right. I knew it was wrong, but I could not move. Then, he finally pulled back. He started to caress my cheek and chin, his fingers tracing patterns on my skin. He kept talking, telling me I was very beautiful. He said he could give me more gifts and more medication for my acne. I said nothing. I just waited, desperately, for the moment I could return to the safety of the till. When I finally managed to break away, I hurried back to my spot at the register, my safe zone. I immediately checked my phone for the recording. My heart sank. It had stopped recording just a few seconds after I started it. The message on the screen simply said, "Not enough memory." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. I needed to record something. I needed to go to the police. Surely, they would help me, right? I had another chance to record something that afternoon, this time trying to stay within the bounds of the store camera. I started asking him why he was giving me gifts, hoping he would say something, anything that would be more than enough proof. He played it safe, only saying vague things. But there was a portion where he told me to ask him for anything, and he would give it to me. I clung to that, hoping it could serve as some form of evidence. When I went back home later that day, I checked my recording again, filled with a sliver of hope. But I was shocked to find that the audio was not clear at all. It was a garbled mess, full of static and unintelligible sounds. I felt completely lost. I did not know what to do at this point. Then, my friend called me back, asking why I had called her earlier. I explained everything that had happened, my voice shaking as I recounted the details. She listened patiently. After I finished, she said it was weird. She said that sort of thing had never happened to her, or to any of the other coworkers. She seemed genuinely surprised. After the call, I started to think to myself, did my friend even believe me? Would the police believe me? I did not have any solid proof that this had happened. I just felt incredibly dirty and a deep sense of despair that no one would believe me. Now, you are probably all thinking that after all this, I surely would have left the job, but I did not. My family was struggling financially, and I truly needed the money to pay for my school expenses without asking them for help. I felt trapped. I stayed for 3 more months. The harassment continued for only about 3 days after that initial incident. I had finally had enough, and I decided to change my approach. I became distant and unpleasant towards the owner. I did not smile at him, I did not engage in small talk, and I would quickly deflect any attempts he made to get close. He stopped giving me gifts after the first month. He must have noticed my change in attitude. After 3 months, he decided to fire me. It was his son who did the talking. The son said I should have smiled more often in the store, and that I should have been more pleasant to customers. I wanted so badly to tell the son what had truly happened, to explain why I had stopped smiling, why I had become distant. But the words just would not come out. I could not find them. Even though I was not the one who quit, I felt an immense sense of relief. I was out. I was free from that place and that man. For those who were wondering, the store is still there, still open, with the same old man and his family running it. The memory of that time still feels like a dark shadow. My name is Sari, and I am 17 years old. For as long as I can remember, I have always gone with my mom to help her do the grocery shopping. We usually, almost always, went to our local superstore, and we still do to this very day. During the early part of 2020, when the world was gripped by a global health crisis, every public place started to set up systems to keep people apart. They wanted to reduce the chances of spreading illness. My local superstore did this by blocking off one side of the store's entrance. The other side was kept open, with automatic doors for entry and exit. Plastic cones and yellow police tapes separated the flow of people, marking distinct pathways. One day, my mom, my older brother, my baby brother, and I all went to the superstore together. After I helped my mom load the heavy items into the cart, she would usually let me wander off on my own. She was not really worried, as I was 14 at the time, and for the most part, I could take care of myself. I had saved up some money from a small job, and I wanted to buy some incense sticks. I went to the aisle where they were, picked out a few scents I liked, and then met back up with my mom and brothers near the checkout lines. While we were waiting in line to pay for our groceries, my baby brother started to whine. He became impatient, squirming in the cart. My mom, trying to calm him, gave my older brother her car keys. She told him to go wait in the car with the baby for us. He took the keys and left. Also, during this time, I had extreme social anxiety. As my mom's groceries were almost done being scanned by the cashier, I started to feel nervous. My palms grew sweaty. I asked her if she could pay for my incense sticks for me, but she said no. She wanted me to learn to talk to people, she explained, and to start being more social. She said it was good for me. While she was paying, I began to notice a feeling of being watched. I am also a very paranoid person, even now, so this feeling immediately put me on edge. I slowly turned around, scanning the area behind me. That is when I saw him. He was a tall, older man with pale skin. His clothes were worn down, like workers' clothes, and they seemed like they had not been washed in a very long time. His shirt had many dark stains on it. He wore a mask that was white and round, with yellow straps that reminded me of what painters wear. I assumed he might be a painter because he also had white paint on his jeans. His thin gray hair was on the sides of his head, slicked over a bald spot. His face was very oily and dirty. I quickly looked away when he gave me a weird smile. It was not a friendly smile. It made me feel a chill creep down my spine. My mom then told me she was going to the car and would wait for me there. My baby brother cried loudly whenever he was away from my mom, and she wanted to soothe him. I mumbled, "Okay, Mom," my heart still beating fast from the encounter with the old man. I nervously handed my items to the cashier. My anxiety was so high that I accidentally gave her too much money. I fumbled with the bills, my hand shaking. She calmly handed me my receipt and my change. I quickly started to walk towards the automatic doors to leave. I just wanted to get out of there. Before I could hand my receipt to a superstore employee, who usually checked them at the exit, I heard a voice very close behind me. "Oh, don't worry," the voice said. I saw her pay. She didn't steal anything. The old lady who was checking receipts at the exit chuckled awkwardly too. I gave a weak, awkward little laugh back. It was only then that I realized how quickly he must have paid for his own items to catch up to me so fast. The lady handed back my receipt, and I walked even more quickly out the doors. I paused outside, looking out into the large parking lot. I always have trouble remembering where my mom parks her car. As I stood there, scanning the rows of vehicles, I heard his voice yet again. "Hey, you know they're making a social distance for the coronavirus, right?" he asked. I turned to look at him in shock. My mind started to race. Why was he persisting to follow me so fast? Why on earth did he want to make conversation with me? I did not know what to do. I just replied back, "Yeah, I know," very quietly, my voice barely a whisper. I turned back to the parking lot. Just then, I saw my mom pulling up to the front of the entrance walkway in her car. My heart leaped with relief. I started to walk quickly towards her car, almost running. The man followed behind me. He kept pace with me for a few steps, his presence a heavy weight behind me. Then, he finally went into a completely different direction when he saw me going directly towards my mom's car. When I got into the car, My mom immediately asked me what the man had been telling me. She told me to explain it to her before he could run away. I told her he was talking to me about the whole social distancing thing, and that it was nothing bad he said, but that he had been following me and really creeping me out. I then looked over to the man. He was still in the parking lot, and he was now staring directly at me while I was explaining what had happened to my mom. And look, I know it is going to sound cliche as anything, but he then entered a white van that had a ladder strapped to the top of it. It looked exactly like something out of a bad movie. Nothing else ended up happening. It was just a creepy and bizarre encounter at the end of the day, but it really made me hyper aware of my surroundings, even more than I already was. The memory still makes me shiver.
This happened during August of 2021. I was 16 years old at the time. This particular shopping trip, however, it was only me and my mom. Whenever it is just the two of us, we tend to go look at the women's clothing section to see if there are any nice new items. During this specific day, I was feeling incredibly lazy. I was dressed in comfortable sweats and an oversized t-shirt, and my hair was pulled up in a messy bun. I had already found some really nice clothes that I liked. I tried them on in a dressing room and then placed them carefully in our shopping cart. My mom also had some clothes that she wanted to try on, so I waited for her outside the dressing rooms with our cart. For a little context, the dressing room area is like a big enclosed cube with plain white walls. In the middle of this cube, there is a walkway where the doors to the individual changing rooms are located. Outside of these walls, more clothes are hung up on racks, forming aisles. I was waiting on the left side of the wall, leaning my arms on the shopping cart handle. I was looking down at my phone, scrolling through my social media feed, trying to pass the time. From my peripheral vision, I saw some shoes walking past me. I did not really think too much about it at first. People walk around stores all the time. But then I noticed them walking past me back and forth a few more times. That is when a knot of unease started to form in my stomach. Being a paranoid person, even now, I knew something was wrong. I slowly looked up in the direction of the person. I noticed that they seemed to be around my age, or perhaps a little older. It was a redhead with glasses. This is going to sound weird, but I pretended I was taking a selfie. I lifted my phone, aimed it generally in his direction, but I had actually taken a photo of him. I just wanted it as a precaution in case he did anything. I think he noticed. As soon as I lowered my phone, he went to where I could not see him anymore, disappearing behind a clothing rack. I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of it. I just went back to looking at my phone, trying to calm myself. Then, literally a minute later, I felt like I was being stared at again. I knew it was him. My heart gave a little jolt. I looked up. He was sort of hiding behind a rack of clothing, peeking out, as if I was not going to see him there. It was so obvious, and that was a first for me. It really scared the hell out of me. I grabbed the handle of my shopping cart and pulled it quickly to the right side of the dressing room wall. I wanted to put some distance between us. As I did so, I heard quick footsteps from behind me. This made my body tense, and I braced myself for the worst. I imagined him lunging, trying to grab the cart or me. But then I heard the footsteps stop and slow down. He must have realized I saw him, because he only moved a few feet and then walked away again. I walked quickly to the door where my mom was dressing. I wanted to ask her if she was almost done. She said yes just a moment. While I was standing in the doorway, I saw him walk past yet again. He was staring in my direction the entire time, his eyes fixed on me as he moved. I did not see him again after that. Not until I was with my mom, after she was done trying on clothes, and I was telling her about what had happened. We were walking out of the clothing area, and as I was mid-sentence, speaking of the devil, I saw him again. He was walking towards my direction, but this time, he had someone else right beside him. This person looked like his older brother, and he was actually shopping, looking at clothes compared to his much creepier sibling. As I walked past him, I had a look of shock on my face. He met my gaze and gave me the most spine-chilling smile I had ever seen. It was not a smile of amusement. It was a smile that promised something dark. I was 16, but this happened during early 2022. I was only with my mom again. We were walking out of an aisle, rounding a corner, when we accidentally bumped into a tall, dark-skinned man who was trying to enter the one we were exiting. We both apologized quickly. He said, "Do not worry," and we continued to turn into the next aisle. As we did so, he then asked, "How are you ladies doing today?" I turned back to look at him because it sounded as if it was directed towards us, and it was. He was staring right at me and my mom. "We're doing just fine," I said, a little confused as to why he would even talk to us like that when our backs were turned away from him and we did not even know this guy. I kind of had a gut feeling right away that he was a major creep, and I was right. He kept following us for like 3 more aisles. I spoke to my mom in Spanish, my voice low. "He keeps following us," I whispered. She responded back, also in Spanish, saying that she noticed it too. I was so done and frustrated. I had dealt with so many creepers before in that same superstore. I then turned around abruptly and just glared at the man. I fixed him with my most intense, angry stare. It seemed to work. We did not see him again after that. So yeah, those are my 3 stories of my creepy encounters at the superstore. Hopefully, I will not have to send in any more. But I have learned that I can never truly relax in public spaces anymore. The simple act of shopping became a constant exercise in vigilance. Every time I step into a store, a part of me is always on edge, scanning for that familiar feeling of being watched, or for a face that lingers too long. The innocence of my teenage years, when shopping was just a casual outing, has completely evaporated. Now, it is a task laced with a subtle underlying dread, and it all started with those small, unnerving moments. I was 16 years old, and this story happened during the early part of 2022. It was just my mom and me on this particular day. We were walking out of an aisle, minding our own business, when we accidentally bumped into a tall man who was trying to enter the aisle we were leaving. He had dark skin and a very imposing presence. We both apologized quickly, saying, "Excuse me," at the same time. He simply said, "Do not worry," his voice calm. We continued to turn into the next aisle, ready to go about our shopping. As we did so, he then asked, "How are you ladies doing today?" His voice was a little too friendly, a little too close for comfort. I turned back to look at him. It sounded as if it was directed specifically towards us, and it was. He was staring right at me and my mom, a strange fixed smile on his face. "We're doing just fine," I said, a little confused as to why he would even talk to us like that. Our backs were turned away from him just moments before, and we did not know this man at all. It felt odd, like an invasion of our private space, even in a public store. I immediately had a gut feeling that he was a major creep. My instincts screamed at me, and I was right. As we continued our shopping, moving from one section to another, he kept following us. He was always just a few paces behind, or suddenly appearing in the next aisle we turned into. It happened for what felt like an eternity, through about 3 different aisles. Every time we glanced back, he was there, watching. I spoke to my mom in hushed Spanish, my voice low and urgent. "He keeps following us," I whispered, trying to convey my growing unease without alerting him. She responded back, also in Spanish, saying that she had noticed it too. Her expression confirmed her own discomfort. We were both aware, both unnerved, but unsure of how to shake him. I was so done and frustrated. I had dealt with so many unsettling encounters before in that same superstore. A wave of irritation mixed with my fear. I decided I could not take it anymore. I abruptly turned around. I fixed the man with a direct, angry glare. My eyes narrowed, and I stared him down, trying to project a strong, unyielding presence. It seemed to work. As soon as my gaze met his strange smile wavered. He paused. We did not see him again after that. He vanished from our sight, and the heavy feeling of being watched finally lifted. So yeah, that is my 3rd story of a creepy encounter at that superstore. Every time something like this happened, It solidified my belief that I had to be constantly aware of my surroundings. The store, which was once a familiar and routine place, became a hunting ground for unsettling experiences. Each incident added a layer to my wariness. The feeling of vulnerability in such a public place became a constant companion. The sheer brazenness of some of these individuals was astounding. They did not seem to care that they were in plain sight, that their actions were clearly visible. This lack of concern made them even more disturbing. It implied a sense of entitlement, a belief that their actions were acceptable or that they would face no consequences. The way he spoke, the way he lingered, the way he appeared again and again. It was not just random chance, it was deliberate. And the fact that he stopped when confronted by a stare, rather than a spoken word, suggested a certain type of predator, one who thrives on intimidation and a victim's perceived weakness. My glare must have communicated a boundary he was not expecting. It makes me wonder about the countless other people who might have encountered him, or others like him, who perhaps did not have someone else with them, or who were too polite or fearful to react. The anonymity of a large store, the constant flow of people, can be both a comfort and a danger. It allows for privacy, but also for those with darker intentions to blend in and target unsuspecting individuals. These incidents have forever changed the way I view public spaces. I am always assessing exits, noting who is around me, keeping track of faces that seem to reappear too often. It is an exhausting way to live, but it feels necessary. My mother and I often discuss these events, and it has made us both more protective and cautious. We have developed a silent communication, a quick glance that signals discomfort or suspicion. And it is not just the immediate fear. It is the lingering feeling, the way these memories resurface at unexpected moments. A particular corner of an aisle, a certain type of clothing, or even a similar voice can trigger a flash of that unease. It is a constant reminder that the world is not always as safe as we wish it to be, and that vigilance is not just a suggestion, but a necessity for personal safety. I hope I never have to send in any more stories like these, but I know that the possibility is always there, lurking just out of sight. I work the night shift in a large retail store. My job is mostly stocking shelves. The store is usually quiet during these hours, with only a skeleton crew moving about in the vast, brightly lit aisles. During one particular shift, two things happened that left even our manager completely baffled. It was a strange night, and the air felt heavy with an unseen presence. The first incident occurred around midnight. My coworkers and I were spread out across different departments, focusing on our tasks. Suddenly, a burst of static crackled over the speaker system, loud and jarring in the silence. It sounded as if someone had accidentally hit the button on a walkie-talkie, but instead of a voice, all we heard was some sort of demonic sound in the background. It was distorted, an unnatural noise that sent a shiver down my spine. It almost sounded like screaming, but it was very distant, an otherworldly, hellish sound that seemed to echo through the empty store. It was incredibly off-putting, and we all stopped what we were doing, looking at each other with wide eyes. No one said a word. The static ended as abruptly as it began, leaving behind an unsettling silence that felt heavier than before. We tried to shake it off, to go back to our work, but an underlying tension remained. The second incident happened just a few minutes after 3 o'clock in the morning. My coworker and I had just finished our lunch break. We were walking back to our respective areas, our footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. We were chatting quietly about something mundane, trying to lighten the mood after the earlier static. Then, through the speaker system, we heard the distinct sound of someone picking up a phone. It was the clear click and hum of a phone being lifted off a cradle. Our conversation immediately stopped. We looked up at the speakers. The next thing we all heard was the voice of a little girl. It was clear and soft, but filled with a chilling solemnity. She said, "Hello, Mama," her voice echoing through the entire store. Then, with another click, the sound of the phone hanging up followed, and silence returned. My coworker and I just stared at each other, our faces pale in the fluorescent light. Our manager, who had been nearby, walked over, a look of complete bewilderment on his face. He did not even know what was going on. He just shook his head slowly. No one said it was them. No one laughed. There was no explanation. It was not a prank. The atmosphere in the store felt different, colder, as if the air itself had absorbed the chilling message. When I returned to my area, still feeling very uneasy, I looked at my phone. I noticed the date. Now, I am not really a believer of the supernatural. I tend to be a very logical person. But it was Friday the 13th, and the phone call happened only a few minutes after 3 o'clock in the morning. So, take this with a grain of salt, if you will. But the coincidence was unnerving. I had never truly believed that Friday the 13th was a weird day before. I had always dismissed it as silly superstition, but I do now. That night changed something in me. It opened the door to a new way of thinking about things that cannot be easily explained. There has been no explanation as to what happened with either of these events. No one could figure it out. The equipment was checked, but everything seemed to be in order. The phone lines were fine. There were no strained records. It was as if these sounds had manifested out of thin air. We talked about it for days, trying to come up with logical reasons, but nothing fit. The manager even called maintenance to check the entire speaker system, but they found no malfunctions, no loose wires, nothing that could account for such clear, strange sounds. The questions lingered in our minds. Was it a glitch? Was it someone playing a very elaborate, very disturbing prank? If there was actually a kid stuck in the store that night, I hope they are okay. The thought of a child wandering alone in a vast, empty store in the middle of the night, reaching out for their mother, still sends a shiver down my spine. It is a chilling image. The possibility that something more sinister, something truly inexplicable, occurred that night remains an unsettling mystery that has never left me. The memory of that distant, hellish scream and that small, solemn voice saying, "Hello, Mama," still echoes in my mind on quiet nights. It serves as a constant reminder that some things, perhaps, are just beyond our understanding, or at least, beyond the reach of a logical explanation. And sometimes, the most terrifying encounters are the ones that leave you with more questions than answers. I was 18 years old. It was a pivotal time in my life, a period of big changes. I had just moved into my new apartment with my best friend in a totally new city. I had grown up in the quiet countryside my whole life, surrounded by open fields and familiar faces. So, living in a bustling city was a strange and overwhelming feeling for me. The constant noise, the crowds, the sheer number of people, it all contributed to my already bad social anxiety. Because of this, I would always try to avoid going to the grocery store during the day as much as possible, opting for off-peak hours to minimize interaction. On this particular night, I decided to head out at around 1:30 in the morning to go get some things that we needed for our new place. It felt safer, quieter. I drove into an almost empty superstore parking lot. There were maybe about 5 cars in total, scattered sparsely. I felt a wave of relief. This meant I would likely avoid any social interaction with anyone. It was exactly what I wanted. The moment I walked into the store, I felt it. 2 men immediately took notice of me. They were just standing there, near the women's bathroom, watching me. Their eyes followed me as I grabbed a shopping cart and headed towards the produce section. My first thought at the time was that they must have just checked out and were about to head to their car. I tried to dismiss the feeling, to rationalize their presence, but I could still feel their eyes on me as I shopped. It was a heavy, unnerving gaze. I tried to act normal, picking out fruits and vegetables, but every fiber of my being was aware of their presence. I kept them in my peripheral vision, feeling a rising sense of unease. Then, I saw it. At the corner of my eye, I saw them leaving the building. I let out a silent sigh of relief. My biggest fear at the time was that they would aggressively try to ask me for my number or harass me throughout the store. They just had that vibe to them, a predatory energy that set off all my internal alarms. I purposely took a little longer than usual shopping for my items. I wanted to make absolutely sure that they were truly long gone before I dared to leave the store. I just had a feeling, a lingering sense of dread, that they might still be out there. I picked up extra things I did not even really need, just to buy myself more time. I finally checked out. At this point, I was probably one of the only customers left in the entire store. The silence was almost deafening, amplifying my unease. The moment I exited the store, pushing my cart, I noticed it. There was a car right next to mine that had not been there before. It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. I knew that because my family had the same car back in the 90s, and its distinctive shape was unmistakable. Then my heart sank. I noticed those same two men I had seen earlier. They were standing next to the Oldsmobile, smoking a cigarette, their forms silhouetted against the dim parking lot lights. For a moment, I just froze. My mind raced, grappling with the shock. Should I go back inside? Should I ask someone to walk me to my car? What the hell do I do? A surge of panic coursed through me. I decided that I did not want to embarrass myself over nothing. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. So, I decided to risk it. Looking back, that was not my smartest idea ever. As I briskly walked back to my truck, I thought that maybe if I smiled at them and acted really nice, they would not try anything funny. It was a naive hope. I walked over to my car, seemingly very confident in myself, forcing a small, tight smile. I just gave the men a little nod. That is when one of them looked straight at me, his eyes dark in the low light. He then said, his voice low and gravelly, "It's a quiet night." I knew, instinctively, that those words were meant to scare me. My forced confidence shattered. I picked up my pace even more, almost a run. Right when I thought I was about to be attacked, a lovely customer, an older woman, coincidentally left the building. Her presence was a lifeline. I was so incredibly relieved. I ran really fast into my car and locked the door. I swear that I did this in lightning speed, my hands fumbling with the keys, but locking the doors almost instantly. The minute I locked my door, the men jumped into their Oldsmobile right away too. I drove off as fast as I could, my heart still pounding. I looked in my rearview mirror and realized they had taken off behind me too. All I wanted to do was go home, but I did not want them to know where I lived. So, I just kept driving down really weird roads, taking turns randomly, trying to lose them. All while they followed me, their headlights a persistent glow behind me. Then I had a brilliant thought. I would park my car on the police station's parking lot. I knew it was a long shot, but it was my only hope. I drove straight there, pulling into the well-lit parking lot. Sure enough, as soon as I turned in, their car turned down another road, finally giving up the chase. I sat there for a while, still shaking, trying to compose myself. I called my roommate and told her all about what had happened to me. I made sure, as I drove home from the police station, that no cars were following me. Every shadow, every distant headlight seemed like a potential threat. The next morning, I was at work when my roommate called me over. Her face looked completely spooked. She asked if the waitress at the diner where she worked would tell me what she had just told her. It turned out that in the next town over, only 10 minutes away from where I lived, at 3 o'clock in the morning, in another superstore parking lot, a girl was attacked. She was grabbed from what I was told, and they tried to force her into their car. She had fought really hard to break free from their grasp. She kicked and screamed until someone from the superstore came out of the store, alerted by the commotion. The guys then hopped in their car and sped off. I asked the waitress if she remembered anything about what car they drove. She thought for a moment, then nodded. "It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme," she said. My blood ran cold. The coincidence was too terrifying to ignore. It cemented the chilling reality of what I had narrowly escaped. A few weeks ago, I drove to my local Target store to do my favorite hobby, buying things I did not actually need. It is a guilty pleasure, a way to unwind. The area this Target is located in has always been pretty safe. It is a well-maintained shopping center, usually bustling with people. However, just a little while before this incident, There had been a car robbery in the same shopping center parking lot. Someone was held at gunpoint and then forced to hand over their car. The surprising detail was that the guy who stole it was kind and no one was injured. It was a strange detail, but it stuck with me. Anyway, as I pulled into the parking lot that day, I noticed it was fairly empty, which was pretty uncommon for a Friday afternoon. Usually, this place is packed. I pulled into a parking spot right outside the store, just a few spots away from the entrance. As I was turning off my car, I saw a bald man dressed in a black hoodie and dark jeans. He approached two women who looked to be probably in their mid-30s as they were packing their groceries into their car. I thought this was a little suspicious. His gait, the way he approached them, fell off. So, I kept my eyes on them as I turned off my car and placed my keys in my bag, subtly keeping them within reach. The man and the women were probably chatting for about 10 seconds. It seemed like a casual conversation at first. Then, the man reached out and grabbed one of the lady's arms. She quickly pulled away, clearly startled. Both women then scrambled into their car, their movements urgent. As they started to back up, the man moved to the side, his eyes scanning the parking lot. His gaze then fell directly on me. As soon as we made eye contact, my mind screamed, "Oh no." I am an 18-year-old female, and I barely have the strength of a small hamster. I knew instantly that if this man tried anything with me, I would have a very difficult time fighting back. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The man was momentarily blocked from my view as the car with the two ladies backed out of the space and then sped away. As soon as I broke brief eye contact with him, I grabbed my phone from my cup holder and pretended to look busy. I stared intently at the screen, hoping to appear preoccupied and unapproachable. Not even 2 seconds after I opened my phone, there was a violent bang on my window. The sound was incredibly loud, startling me so much that I literally jumped. I quickly looked up, my eyes wide with fear, and I was then met with the man's face. He was not even 5 inches away from my driver's side window. His eyes were wide, and his expression was intense. I just stared at him like a deer caught in headlights, my mind completely blank, not knowing what to do. He hit my window again, a louder, more forceful bang, and then yelled, "Roll down the window." My car was already off at this point. My keys were in my bag. There was no way I was going to find my keys, turn on my car, and then open my window to talk to this man. My hands trembled, my body stiff. I shook my head no, a small, firm movement. He hit my window yet again, even harder this time. "Please," he said, his voice laced with urgency. "I just want to ask you a question." Now, I am an avid lover of horror story channels on YouTube. I have heard enough stories to know that this situation definitely was not safe. My gut screamed at me. I instinctively pointed my thumb downwards, a clear no gesture, as he stared at me through the glass, his face contorted, his gaze turning hateful. He smacked my window a few more times, his frustration palpable, and then yelled, "Well, whatever then. You stupid ... His words were cut off, but the venom was clear. He then turned around abruptly, smacked the hood of the car next to mine with an angry thud, and walked away quickly. I was in absolute shock at what had just happened. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat in my car for probably about 15 minutes, my heart slowly returning to a normal rhythm before I finally felt safe enough to walk into the Target. Nothing else happened after that. I reported what happened to a Target employee inside the store. She listened gravely and said they would alert security and check the parking lot cameras. Thankfully, despite the terrifying ordeal, I still had a pleasant time roaming around Target and buying unnecessary items. It was a strange mix of lingering fear and the mundane act of shopping. But the memory of his face pressed against my window and his angry words will stay with me for a very long time. It was a stark reminder of how quickly a normal day can turn into a terrifying encounter. This did not happen directly to me, but it is from my father's experience. I am a 33-year-old female, and this happened back when I was around 4 years old. It is a story my dad has recounted many times, a memory etched deeply in our family's history. My parents had taken my 2-year-old sister and me to our local Target store. It was a typical shopping trip, probably on a warm summer day, because my mom wanted to get us some new swimming suits for the upcoming summer. As my mom took my sister and me into the fitting room area to try on the suits, my dad waited for us. He positioned himself in the kids' clothing section, keeping an eye on things just a few feet from the fitting rooms. He then noticed a man, from my father's guess, around mid to late 20s, standing by himself. The man was near the girls' swimming suit section, which immediately struck my dad as a bit odd. He seemed out of place. The man was hunched over in a very awkward and unnatural position. My dad watched him for a moment, a sense of unease growing. It was then that my dad realized what this man was doing. He was, to put it plainly, masturbating while holding on to some of the swimsuits on the racks. My dad said that he immediately felt a surge of pure anger and outrage. His blood ran cold, then boiled with fury. He thought right away of his daughters, my sister and me, and his wife, who were in the fitting rooms no more than a few feet away from this sick, disgusting man. His protective instincts, he said, just took over. He did not hesitate. He marched right up to the man. He did not whisper. He did not hesitate. He then shouted at him, his voice booming through the quiet section of the store. "You're a disgusting piece of garbage," he yelled, his words sharp and full of contempt. The man looked startled, his head snapping up. In his surprise, he actually fell down onto the floor, now completely exposed. Another shopper, who had been in a nearby aisle, saw what was happening. She gasped, then quickly alerted a store associate. The associate immediately called security, and the police were also called. The man was quickly arrested, his disgusting act brought to a halt. It is not the scariest story in the traditional sense, I know. There were no monsters or ghosts, but it just goes to show you how very real these sorts of predators are. They are not hiding in the shadows of some dark alley. They are in plain sight, in places you would least expect, like a family-friendly department store. I am really thankful my dad was there. I am thankful that my sister and I were not the ones running into this demented, sick individual. The thought that it could have been us, that we could have walked out of that fitting room at the wrong moment, still sends a shiver down my spine. It makes me incredibly grateful for my dad's quick thinking and brave actions. He did not wait. He acted. Parents, this goes without saying, but always be vigilant around your children. Predators and pedophiles are always looking for their opportunity to take advantage of a child who is left unguarded. They are patient, they are cunning, and they are everywhere. You can never be too careful when it comes to the safety of your child. It is a harsh truth, but one that needs to be constantly reinforced. The world is not always a safe place, and the worst threats often appear in the most innocent settings. My dad's story is a constant reminder of that. It is a stark warning. The memory of what happened in that store and the potential danger we were in has stayed with our family. It is a reminder to always be aware, always be present, and always protect those who are most vulnerable. The courage my father showed that day is something I deeply admire, and it serves as a powerful example of what it means to be a protector. To clarify, I am 16 years old, and I identify as non-binary. People often tell me I look younger than 16 due to my baby face and my small stature. This particular incident happened today, early in the morning. My dad decided to go to Target to get groceries. Usually, when I go to Target with him, I separate from him to look around the store on my own. I like to browse the clothes or look for books and collectibles. So, this is what I did when I got in there. I decided to look at the clothes in the front of the store, near the checkout lines. I did not see anything I liked, so I wandered towards the back of the store. That is where the technology, toys, and book sections are located. I started by going to the collectible area, hoping to find something interesting. I kept walking around, looking through the aisles, my eyes scanning the shelves. That is when I noticed this man. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet or more, with slicked back black hair. He had a big, scruffy beard and roundish glasses. He looked like he was in his early 30s. He was wearing an AM/PM work shirt, which I thought was a bit weird for a target, but I just ignored it. It was early in the morning, and I thought that maybe he had to go to work after this. After a bit, I started to notice something strange. He would randomly pop up wherever I was. I would turn down an aisle, and there he would be, a few paces behind me, or suddenly in an adjacent aisle. It was kind of weird, but I did not think too much into it at first. I tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but it kept happening. After a bit more time of me looking around, I decided to go walk around the kids' toy section. I did this specifically to see if he was following me. To my horror, I realized he was. I would walk through the aisles, winding through the toy section, and he would just always pop up right in front of me or to the side of me. I am also very awkward, and I really do not like confrontation at all. So, I try to avoid social interaction most of the time. My heart started to pound. I walked through the middle aisle and stopped, pretending to look at something on a shelf. The same guy who had been following me stopped as well, positioning himself a few feet away. Then, he said to me, his voice a little too loud in the quiet aisle, "You're cute. Why don't you do a photo shoot with me for $250? I froze up. My mind went blank. I started fidgeting with my hands, my eyes darting around. I don't know, maybe," I mumbled, trying to make him go away. I hoped my vague response would put him off, but he just kept on persisting, saying different prices to try and make me say yes. He started to list off higher amounts, then lower, as if trying to find my price. At one point, he had stated, "Are you nervous?" His eyes were fixed on me. During this whole time, I did not know what to do, and I was really uncomfortable. My stomach churned. At one point, he had asked me if I was here by myself. I immediately said no, trying to project that I was not alone. By this time, all alarm bells were really going off in my head. I knew I needed to get away from the situation, but I did not know how to do it without being rude or causing a scene. He then said something along the lines of, "Do you have Snapchat or Instagram? Why don't you add me?" I really debated on saying yes or no. My shyness and my desire to avoid confrontation got the best of me. My mind was racing, trying to find a safe way out. I then said to him, yeah, I have an Instagram." I pulled out my phone and quickly showed him my username. He typed it into his phone and followed me. He then told me that my username was cute, which was kind of weird because it was just a random username I had made up. But I know what you are all thinking. Why the hell did you give it to him? Well, I panicked. I could not say no due to me just not being able to say no because of my nervousness. My body physically would not let me. After this, it went on again about the photo shoot. He even stated it would be below the face, which I thought was really weird because it was pretty damn obvious I was a minor. His comments sent another wave of unease through me. So I just said, "I'll think about it." There was a long moment of silence. He just stared at me. Then he said, "Well, did you think about it?" I did not say anything. I just stared at the floor. After a couple of minutes of him trying to convince me to say yes, he finally gave up. "If you think about doing it, just snap or text me," he said. And finally, he walked away. I immediately walked away too, turning quickly and heading for a quiet section of the store. I started panicking. My breath caught in my throat. I found an empty spot on one of the bottom shelves in the book aisles and just sat there, my heart racing, looking around frantically. I saw my dad in the distance, finishing up his shopping. I walked over to him, relieved to see a familiar face. I did not tell him what happened. I was scared of what he might say to me, scared he might be angry or disappointed. When we checked out, I thought it was really weird that the man was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished completely from the checkout lines, which was really odd to me, given his persistence earlier. We left shortly after. As soon as I got home, I decided to block him on Instagram. This is where the story ends. If the man ever sees this, I hope we do not meet again. The memory of his persistent presence and his unsettling offer still gives me chills. It changed how I feel about going into public places alone. I am always looking over my shoulder now, always aware, always a little bit afraid. The innocence I had about the world, that sense of safety, was chipped away that morning. In the summer of 2017, I had just moved to Texas from the East Coast. It was a big change, a new environment, and I was still getting used to the sprawling landscape and the different pace of life. Being a night owl, I would often go on really long walks during the late nights. The city would quiet down, and I found a strange comfort in the darkness and solitude. I was heading home on one of these walks when I passed by the 24/7 Walmart. The bright lights of the store were a beacon in the night. I decided to go inside and grab some snacks, maybe a drink or two, something to last me through the night and into the next morning. When I entered, a group of about 6 individuals, who appeared to be under the influence, greeted me. They were playing around with the shopping carts and some games right within the entranceway, blocking the flow of people. Their laughter was loud and jarring. I managed to avoid them, slipping past their chaotic antics. But as I entered the main part of the store, I noticed a few of them staring me down. Their eyes felt heavy on my back. I approached one of the 2 cashiers working in the front. I was careful to keep my voice low, but I told her all about the group, describing their disruptive behavior. She listened intently and then informed me that security was already on their way to deal with the issue. That gave me a small sense of relief. I went around, quickly grabbed enough snacks to last the night and the morning, and then started to head towards the second entrance. I figured if I exited from a different side of the store, I would avoid those individuals. But unfortunately, 3 of them had come to the second entrance, still causing a nuisance, their voices echoing in the relatively empty store. Seeing them staring at me, their eyes fixed on me, I decided to change my plan. I turned around and went back to the aisles. I bought 3 extra items. The first was a backpack, a simple one, to carry my food and other items securely. The second was a baseball bat, a heavy, solid one. And finally, a powerful flashlight. There was a specific reason for the flashlight that I will disclose in a little bit. Anyway, I proceeded to walk out of the store, baseball bat in hand, swung casually over my shoulder. The 3 individuals were still there, 2 girls and 1 guy. One of the girls was busy just staring into space, her eyes unfocused. The second girl, however, saw me and immediately started reaching towards my backpack. The guy moved in right behind her, clearly intending to back her up. I reacted instinctively. I took my bat and basically swung it, making solid contact into the girl's chest. It was a forceful blow, and she cried out in pain, doubling back, clutching her chest. The guy rushed at me, clearly angered by my action. He lunged forward, but I was ready. I raised my bat, prepared to swing it again. He stopped short, probably seeing the determination in my eyes and the weapon in my hands. He dropped to the ground, raising his arms to protect himself, as if expecting me to attack again. I left him trembling on the ground near his friend, who was still groaning in pain, before rushing out of the store. I figured the other 3 members of their group were still at the first entrance, so I would be safe on this side. I decided to take the back way to my house. Now, I got the flashlight because the back way to my house was under construction. It was a dark, unpaved path with only earth beneath my feet and just 2 weak streetlights in the entire air. As I circled around a large pile of dirt, I heard random scuffling sounds coming from the darkness. My heart pounded. I kept my flashlight aimed ahead, piercing the shadows. But then I could see a shape moving through the darkness, right towards me. The closer I got to my apartment, the closer the figure got towards me. I spun around and aimed the light directly into the shadows. The powerful beam caught the 3rd individual, the girl who was staring into space from earlier. She glared at me, her face contorted with anger. She started cursing me, her voice hoarse, yelling at me for attacking her friends. I quickly flew back away, moving towards one of the faint streetlights, seeking any form of illumination and safety. Once I was underneath it, bathed in its weak glow, I put away my flashlight and gripped the bat with both of my hands. My knuckles were white, I screamed at her, my voice raw, to back the hell off. The angry woman did not listen. She rushed at me like she was a rabid animal, her movements wild and uncoordinated. As soon as she got within range, I smashed the bat full force right into her forehead. There was a dull thud. The woman dropped, falling onto her back, clearly knocked down by the blow. I did not wait to see if she was okay. I then used my flashlight for a quick double check, sweeping the beam around to make sure there was no other immediate danger before booking it back home, my legs burning with exertion. A few days later, I went back to the Walmart during the night, carrying my 3 items with me, just in case. I did not want to be caught off guard again. The cashier from the night before, the one I had warned, recognized me. She came over and told me that after I left, the police came and arrested 5 of the group. Apparently, she explained, they were on crack and they went into the Walmart high off their minds. The thing that really bugs me to this day is that the girl I knocked out seemingly was not caught. What the hell happened with her? The question still haunts me. Did she just disappear? Did she get help? Or did she just go back to her life on the streets, forever scarred by that night? The mystery of her fate is unsettling, a loose end in a terrifying encounter. I live in southern Canada, in a relatively decent-sized city. It has always felt safe to me, a quiet, peaceful place where bad things simply do not happen. I mean, it is Canada, right? That sense of security was deeply ingrained. I have always had an interest in true crime, however, and I have always been aware of my surroundings, which is probably why I am writing this post here. This awareness has always been a part of me, a small voice urging caution. It was a beautiful day. Winter was finally coming to an end, and the air was crisp and fresh. The sun was bright, melting the last remnants of snow. As a last-minute decision, I realized I needed a specific hair product that I could only get in my local Walmart store. Being 20 years old, I drove myself. I parked my car in the busy lot and got out, walking towards the entrance. As I am walking, I hear a man's voice out of nowhere. "Ma'am!" "Hey, ma'am," he called. I turned to look. It was a man in his 50s or 60s, wearing glasses. He then approached me, his pace quick. He started asking me how I liked my car, because his son, he said, was thinking about getting the same one. Fair enough, I thought, but not really. I drive a very common Ford car, one that countless people own. It seemed like an odd way to strike up a conversation. I answered him politely, giving him a brief review of my car. As someone pulls out of their parking spot nearby, he then pinches my coat, his fingers grabbing the fabric. He goes on to tell me how I should always be locking my doors from the inside before I get out of the car. He explained that someone recently got some of their stuff stolen from a car, and that I had to be safe as a girl. He rambled on, a string of warnings and unsolicited advice. Blah 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 is all I remember. He grabbed my coat again, this time a firmer grip, and continued about the story. I was trying to be polite, trying to dismiss it. I thought that maybe he was just a too friendly old man, a bit eccentric perhaps. My parents did raise me to be polite, to respect my elders. I was just looking forward to making it into the store, to get my hair product and leave. A second man then approaches the first man. This one was wearing a black baseball cap and looked older, definitely in his 60s. They were now chatting with each other, as if they had just happened to run into each other, a chance encounter. I thought it was a natural occurrence at first. But then, as they continued walking together, they did not say anything to each other. Instead, the first man continued his conversation with me, or at least he tried to, his words directed solely at me. The first man put his arm out, kind of like in a gesture of go through the door first. So, I did, not thinking anything of it. Even though the store entrance was 3 people wide, easily, I was getting a tad nervous at this point. A prickle of unease started to spread. I walked into the store really quickly, my pace increasing. I made a direct right turn into the themed aisles, which were usually quiet. I speed walked down to the shampoo aisle, which was not that far from the entrance. I also only had to turn down one of the aisles to find it, so I had not been pursuing down endless aisles, looking. I knew exactly where to go. I was grabbing the product. I was down the aisle for less than 5 seconds when that first man suddenly walked down the same aisle, appearing as if out of nowhere. He was standing a few feet from me. I looked up, and a sick feeling invaded my body. My fight or flight response then kicked in, an urgent alarm ringing in my head. I grabbed the hair product I wanted, my hand trembling slightly, and headed quickly towards the cash registers. I then deliberately picked a female cashier to cash me out, just in case I would have to say something to ask for help. I am in line now, standing behind only one man. My eyes darted around. I looked behind me to see that it was the second man, the one who the first man ran into right before entering the store. He was now walking back and forth all along the checkouts, watching me with nothing in his hands. It was unsettling. Keep in mind, I was literally in the store for less than 5 minutes. It was impossible for him to have shopped and still be waiting. As I cashed out my things, I tried to keep my composure. I made eye contact with the cashier, hoping she would sense my unease. The second man, the one who was pacing, suddenly joined the line behind me. He was now watching me cash out a pack of gum. He was positioned on the path towards my only exit. It was as if he was waiting for someone, even though he never initially entered the store with this man. They just happened to run into each other, and as far as I could tell, they were not shopping together. I contemplated my next move. Should I ask the cashier for help? Should I draw attention to myself? Instead of asking the cashier for help, I figured these two older men probably depended on a quick, snake-like attack rather than being able to catch someone in a chase. So, I decided to book it. Also, do not do this like I did. You should always pay attention to your surroundings and seek help if you feel unsafe. But I sprinted down the aisle, my best friend on the phone, in tears as I was running to my car. I frantically told her, "I'm being followed. The two men are following me, and I don't know what to do." My voice was high-pitched with panic. I made it to my car and got in, locking all of the doors with a desperate click. I looked around. I did not see the first man's truck parked around me anymore. I obviously took the long way home, taking every turn I could, making sure I was not being followed. Every car that appeared in my rearview mirror sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I am often kept up at night wondering what could have happened to me. I live in a border city with easy access to the highway. It is really easy to think about me ending up another face plastered to a billboard, a missing person. Thank God that never happened. The memory of their coordinated movements, the unsettling feeling of being trapped, and the desperate sprint for safety still haunt my thoughts. It was a stark lesson in how quickly apparent safety can dissolve into terrifying danger. I was a manager at a Target store, and I had a truly horrible experience with a customer one time. I always found the situation very strange, even in my years of working in retail. For the most part, customers at Target are very pleasant and not all that bad in comparison to some other places I have worked with the public. I have spent my entire adult life dealing with people, and they can be absolutely horrible sometimes. But at Target, they were a little bit better. In the few years that I had worked there, I never once had to call security or physically escort someone off the premises. I only once ever had to call the police on someone, and I would actually make the case that he was only a target to creep on girls. So I am not even sure that really counts as a typical customer incident. But anyway, I digress. My story with that guy was actually really interesting, and I feel a weird combination of anger and sympathy for this one kid. He must have been about 19 or 20 years old. He was really tall, very thin, and one of the weirdest looking kids I have ever seen. And I do not mean that in a judgmental way or anything. He was just really strange looking. His appearance probably made life for him really difficult, so I can at least understand where he was coming from when he did what he did. It absolutely does not justify or anything, but I can understand him at least, if that makes sense. Anyways, it all started on a usual afternoon. I had just gotten off the phone with corporate, and if you are wondering, yeah, it is always a nightmare dealing with them. I was looking forward to doing some inventory checks and whatnot. The store had been awfully busy that week, so I was eager to get some quiet work done. Suddenly, I had a customer who wanted to speak with me. I went out to talk with her, and she told me about an employee who had been inappropriate with her. I guess one of our people was helping her decide on clothes and was standing a little too close to the dressing room door. Honestly, she struck me as a bit of a drama queen. I kind of just brushed it off, and I told her we would look into it and make sure our employees do not do anything like that again. But when you are a manager, you hear complaints like that all the time, and a good chunk of them are from people who just want a free item or discount or something. I got another complaint that day from another customer. This one made me a little more intrigued. It was from someone who looked like she came from a wealthy home, someone probably not looking for a handout here. She said that one of our employees had felt her up while she was looking at clothes. Now that set off some serious alarm bells. That was a completely different level of complaint. That meant that one of my workers was physically creeping on customers on the job. I told her I would look into it thoroughly. That evening, I called a meeting before everyone went home. I explained the situation to my team, my voice firm but calm. I said that whoever was responsible should come into my office and have a chat with me. I told them I would go easy on them if they admitted to doing it without forcing me to look into it. My personal philosophy is that people know when they do wrong, and they just want an opportunity to right their wrongs. So I tried to give it to them, but everyone went home. No one admitted anything, and that was when it was on. We could not look at the security camera footage in the area because all this had been going on near the dressing rooms. The closest security camera we had was on the outside rack of the clothes, but it did not give us very much indication of just what was going on near the dressing rooms themselves. I asked one of my favorite and most reliable employees to try and keep an eye on that area over there. He told me he would be vigilant. 2 days went by, and he did not see anything suspicious. I did not get any more complaints either, which seemed very strange, almost too quiet. Of course, it was not very long before we had another complaint. This one was even more detailed. I then asked the woman what the employee looked like. She forgot the name on the tag, but she told me that it was a tall, skinny guy with weird-looking glasses. And right off the bat, I knew it was not anyone on my team. We did not have a skinny guy with glasses working for us. Immediately, I knew that we were dealing with someone pretending to be an employee. I gave a heads up to my entire team. I had everyone on the lookout for this imposter. I remember getting a text message from one of my female team members a few hours later. She told me that she had spotted someone like that over by the clothing section. I immediately went over there to look around. But before I did, I made sure to put on my jacket around my uniform. That way, it would not be obvious I was the manager looking to bust this guy. I spotted him. This kid stuck out like a sore thumb. He was exactly as described. At first, I was worried I would be dealing with some middle-aged creep, someone truly sinister. I kind of felt bad when I realized this was some high school or college kid just being a weirdo. He was wearing what looked like a Target uniform. If you looked close enough, you could tell it was fake. The logo was slightly off, the fabric not quite right. But I guess the average customer does not really know the difference. I then walked over to him. I tried to sound calm and authoritative. "Excuse me," I said. "Could you please see me in my office?" The look of terror on his face that then washed over him in that moment was unforgettable. His eyes widened, his mouth dropped open slightly. He was not trying to run or anything. He just looked completely shocked and defeated. I brought him into my office and set him down in a chair opposite my desk. From what I could tell, he was an otherwise really good kid. He was going to the local community college, had good grades, went to church, the whole 9 yards. He seemed like he had a lot going for him. I asked him why he was doing this. He mumbled, his voice quiet, that it was because no girls in his college would ever date him. He felt invisible, he said. I tried to explain to him, patiently but firmly, that being a creep to strangers by impersonating a Target employee was absolutely not the answer. I told him I could call the police and actually have him arrested for what he was doing. It was a serious offense, but I told him I would not, for now. I knew having something like that on your record, especially at such a young age, could really mess up your life. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, to give him a chance to turn things around. After all, he had not really done anything horribly bad in the store yet, not in a physical sense. He seemed like he got the memo. He nodded, his eyes cast down. I thought that was the end of it. Well, he did not though. It must have been about 2 or 3 months later that I got another report about something like that. Apparently, this woman was looking for a new sweater, and a Target employee kissed her on the cheek. My mind then immediately jumped to the only thing I could think of. He was back. I called the police. I was really willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he had dug his own hole here. He was in the same area, doing the same exact thing as before. I do not know what happened to him after the fact. The police took him away, but what I can tell you is that one of the cops recognized him immediately. I guess this was not the first time that he was being a creep in clothing stores, pretending to be an employee. He had a history. But other than that one weird kid, the people in Target are normally very okay people. It was a bizarre, unsettling chapter in my career. One that taught me that even in the most seemingly benign environments, you can encounter truly strange and complex situations. So, a little background info before I start my story. I was fresh out of high school and had just started working at a big chain retail store around 2008. I will not name it for privacy reasons. When I was 19, I was working as a cashier. One day, this man, who I guessed was in his early 50s, got into my line. He had very little hair on top, was a bit overweight, and his cheeks were always rosy, like he had some sort of medical condition, or he was constantly on the verge of being drunk. Overall, he had the appearance of a nerdy slob. I cannot remember his name, so for the sake of the story, we will call him Kane. Kane had only a few items to ring up, so I went through his order rather quickly. As I scanned his items, he just kept staring at me, like I was a celebrity or something. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. I found it a bit odd, unsettling even, but I did not think too much of it at the time. I was polite to him, as I was trained to be by the store. He then said to me, his voice low and almost like he was aroused or something, "You're very beautiful. How old are you?" I am honest to a fault, a blessing and a curse, I think. And I told him my age. If only I had known then what I had started, I would have told him not to ask me that, and then to leave me alone. But I was a dumb teenager, I guess, still navigating the complexities of social interactions, especially in a customer service role. He then asked me for my number. I immediately declined, making up an excuse. "I don't have my phone on me," I said, "and I only give out my number if I have my parents okay, or if it's an extreme emergency." He insisted, pushing for it, but I still refused firmly. He finally left my line only when a lady came in behind him with a full card, forcing him to move. As he walked away, he told me to think it over. For the next week or so, Kane kept coming in on days I was working the register. It was not a coincidence. He seemed to know my schedule. He kept asking for my number, and a lot of other things that I found really weird and creepy. He would ask what sort of candy I liked, what sort of things I was into in my spare time, what my hobbies were. He seemed to be trying to gather information about me, to know me better in a way that felt invasive and wrong. I told my mom and dad about it. My dad, unfortunately, just told me to toughen up and not worry about it. He said that he did not have no whim for a daughter. His words made me feel dismissed and alone in my discomfort. "Really, Dad?" But my mom, bless her for being the amazing mama bear she is, told me that if he kept at it, to report him to the management so that they could keep an eye on him. Well, I took her advice. The next time he came in and made me uncomfortable, I went to our assistant manager. Unfortunately, our assistant manager was the world's biggest prick. He just shrugged and said that unless Kane tried to physically do something to me, they could not do anything. What a jerk. His words made me feel even more vulnerable. Kane continued to come in, and he would only go to my register. Even if I had a long line and other cashiers were free, he would wait for me. He would ignore all the other cashiers when they told him they were free to ring up his order. One time, I heard him say to another cashier, "I only want to go to her. She's the best one." He said it casually, not sounding stalkerish to them, but just as a customer who had their favorite cashier. But I knew better. If I had a day off and went into the store for something, since we lived near the store, he would spot me. He would then ask me when I was working. If I told him I was off of work, he would literally ask when I worked next, clearly trying to get my schedule. One time, when I asked why he wanted to know, his response sent a chill down my spine. "I love you so much," he said, his voice a low murmur. "I always want to be around you. You're just so sexy, smart, and kind. I can't go to anyone else but you." He then tried to hug me, his arms reaching out. I backed away quickly, my body stiff with revulsion, and then ran to an aisle to get away from him. But then the day came that I knew he was a legitimate creeper, and I needed to get away from him in the store forever. It was a particular afternoon, about 2 years after I had first encountered Kane. He came into the liquor department of our store. I was manning the register there, and when I saw him pushing his cart of things towards the small register I was at, I froze. This creep was literally going out of his way to come into a part of the store that he never entered, all because he had seen me. As he was looking for a place to check out, he made a beeline to me and started to talk to me. He opened with, "There's my girl, waiting for me like always." His girl? I do not think so. I was not, and never would be, his. A little side note, I had taken to wearing a ring on my left ring finger to try and deter him. It was a ring my then boyfriend from high school had given me as a birthday gift, inexpensive, but lovely nonetheless. Kane never took notice of it for a long time until this day. He saw it on my hand and said in shock, "Do you have a boyfriend?" I thought, finally, he notices I'm not interested. And I told him that I did, and that I was very happy with him. Instead of wishing me well or waving like a child that had gotten a toy taken away, he leaned in. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Forget him," he said. "He'll never treat you the way I can. I can give you everything you'd ever want. I must have you as mine. Leave your boyfriend and come live with me. We can leave tonight after you shift." At this point, I was internally having a full-blown panic attack. I wanted to scream for help, to yell for someone to come and get him away from me. I simply said in a shaky voice that I could not. He then told me that I would make a perfect wife for him. What in the absolute hell? He then left after I handed him his receipt, but not before kissing my hand and saying, "See you soon, honey." I sanitized that hand about 5 times and washed it twice more with soap and water. Yeah, and I still felt violated and dirty. When my mom arrived to pick me up, I was scared to go to her car. What if he grabbed me? What if he hurt my mom? Thankfully, I made it home safe, and Kane was not following us. I told my mom everything, in tears, as she drove us home. She was shocked and furious. We decided enough was enough. I was going to put in my 2-week notice and leave. Fortunately, I had been job searching for a while before this day, and I had received an offer for a cashiering job at a different and much smaller company store. It was way closer to our new house. We had moved a few months prior, and the drive to my workplace had gone from a 15-minute drive to about an hour. And since I do not drive, due to having mild cerebral palsy, which also messes with my eye-to-hand coordination and response time, my parents have to drive me to and from work. I accepted immediately once they called me to start on April 2nd, which just so happened to be my grandmother's birthday. I know, talk about a double gift, right? I never told Kane about leaving. I swore my few friends there to secrecy about it too. I did not want this creep to follow me to my new job and continue to torture me. On the 1st of April, which was my very last day, I just handed over my badge, vest, and social discount card to the manager. I said all my goodbyes to my friends and coworkers and was walking down the main aisle to get to the doors to my mom's car. My freedom was only about 50 steps away when Kane then appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. I froze, but only for a moment, when I realized this would be our very last encounter ever. I continued walking, my stride firm, and he stopped me. Our conversation went as follows. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, his voice sickly sweet. "What register are you on today?" "Oh, I just finished my shift," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the inner turmoil. "All too bad," he said, his smile still wide. "When are you working again?" "I'll get here early and maybe take you to lunch or something." This creepy man, he really did not know how to take a hint. I told him I did not remember my next shift, and then I just said I would see him when I was on again, a vague dismissal. Once he walked away, I bolted to my mom's car, practically leaping inside. She drove us home immediately. I cried, but not out of fear. This time, it was out of immense relief. I was free, liberated from that store and from the creeper that made 6 out of my 8 years at that store absolutely hell. I was never returning there again. The new job was great, a breath of fresh air. I spent 5 happy years there before moving out of state. I still reflect on those 8 years on rare occasions, and my mind will always remember the 50-something nerdy slob that was Kane, my stalker at the grocery store. His face, his voice, and the chilling feeling he evoked are forever burned into my memory. A constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk in seemingly ordinary places. From 2016 to 2020, I worked for one of the largest grocery stores/retail chains in the Midwest. It was my first major role after college. I started as an hourly clerk and worked my way up to assistant store manager. The story I am about to tell you happened in 2019, when I had already been promoted to assistant manager. I am a female, and I was 26 years old at the time. I will share a little bit about the role, as it will play into the story later on. As an assistant manager, I worked all sorts of crazy hours. I worked first, second, and third shifts, weekends, holidays, and everything in between. If you can think of it, I worked it. My responsibilities were broad. I managed different departments, helped customers, handled merchandise, and dealt with human resources tasks. For the most part, I enjoyed the job. It was challenging, but I found a sense of accomplishment in it. One of the few things I did not like, though, was being moved from store to store. The company had a policy where they would keep you in one particular store for 1 to 2 years, and then move you to another store at random. You had no say in which store they moved you to, which was frustrating. Little did I know that the one thing I did not like would actually be the best thing to happen to me while I worked there. Now, on to the story. In the summer of 2018, I was moved from a very nice, clean store to help manage a somewhat ghetto store in my city. It was a stark contrast to my previous location. Around that same time, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. It was a double whammy, to say the least, a challenging period filled with big changes. Half of the customers at the new store were awful. I had rotten seafood thrown in my face because I would not do a refund without a receipt. One of my front-end clerks was robbed at gunpoint in broad daylight, and I even saw a customer defecate on the floor in the middle of an aisle. These are all stories for another time, illustrating the daily chaos and frustrations I faced. Now, despite these adventurous events, the worst of my time at the store started when my pregnant belly began to show. It was early January 2019, and I was around 30 weeks pregnant. My uniform, which usually fit me loosely, was now stretched taut across my growing abdomen. I remember I was stocking produce, arranging the colorful fruits and vegetables, when a man in his 50s or 60s then approached me, asking for help. He had a gray beard, was overweight, and wore grungy, stained clothes. His hair was greasy and unkempt. When I turned around to greet him, putting on my best customer service smile, he immediately noticed my belly, his eyes fixated on it. "Wow, you're pregnant," he said, his voice flat. Me being friendly and trying to keep the interaction positive, I told him, "Yeah, I'm having a little girl, and I'm very excited about it." "Well, congratulations," he said. His tone was still strange, almost devoid of genuine warmth. After that short exchange, I helped him find his items, pointing him to the right aisle. He seemed satisfied, and he was on his way. I interact with so many customers every day that I just put it out of my mind, dismissing it as a slightly awkward but harmless encounter. A couple of days later, I was closing the store, doing my final rounds, when I saw that same man yet again. My stomach tightened a little. He approached me, seeming to appear out of nowhere in the quiet store. He asked me how I was doing. I said I was doing well, just tired, and that I was ready to get off my feet. It had been a long day. That is when he started to ask me questions about myself. His questions became increasingly personal, like where I lived, how old I was, where I graduated high school and college, etc. I answered everything honestly at first, trying to maintain a polite demeanor. Then he asked me which hospital I would be delivering at. For some reason, that question was odd to me. What 50-year-old man asks that? My internal alarm bells started to ring. It then dawned on me that I should not have answered all of his personal questions. I excused myself from the customer, my voice firm. I told him I had to get back to work and wished him a nice night. After that second encounter, I noticed that he would come to the store every single day. But here is the disturbing part. He would only approach me at night when the store was pretty much empty. He would only have a couple of items in his cart, suggesting he was not there for serious shopping. I tried to avoid him the best I could, slipping into back aisles or pretending to be busy. But if he decided to ask for help, I could not turn away a customer. It was against company policy, and I was a manager. The next encounter I had with him was downright disgusting. I was walking him down an aisle to find the item he was requesting. It was a mundane task. He then said, his voice low, "You're having a girl, right?" "Yes, I am," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Well, your husband must have shot deep in order to get you a girl," he said. I stopped dead in my tracks, my body freezing with shock. I was completely flabbergasted. I just stared at the man, my mind reeling. No words could form in my mind. The sheer audacity, the vulgarity of his comment left me speechless. He then filled the silence by saying, "Well, thanks for helping me. Have a great night." And he casually walked away, leaving me standing there, utterly disgusted and humiliated. I should have told my manager and the other associates right then and there, but I let it go, a decision I regret to this day. I was too stunned, too uncomfortable to react. For the next few weeks, I would see the man, but I made sure to walk in the opposite direction. I would go into the back room where the grocery stock was held, pretending I had urgent tasks there. The man caught on that I was avoiding him. So, he started going to the front desk to ask for me directly for help. If the front desk called me, saying that a customer needed me, I would describe the man to them. If it was him, I would tell the front desk I was busy and to handle his needs themselves. I was very uncomfortable, to say the least, by this point. It was February, and I was due next month. My due date was looming. I was thankfully able to avoid interacting with the man, even though I knew he was watching me. I could feel his gaze on me from across the store, a heavy, unsettling presence. At least I avoided speaking to him directly. The last time I interacted with him was the absolute worst, and I was beyond scared. It was just like the first time that I interacted with him. I was in the produce department, my back turned, arranging items on a shelf. He said, "Hey, excuse me." I turned around with a practiced smile, but that quickly faded when I saw who it was. My stomach dropped. He said, his voice accusing, "You've been avoiding me." "No, sir, we've just been busy the last few weeks," I lied, trying to sound professional. "How can I help you?" He looked me up and down, his eyes scanning my body. And I kid you not, he said, "Do you think your husband will still want you after you have the baby? Do you think you'll lose all that baby fat?" In my mind, I was just like, dude, what the hell? The anger surged, hot and fierce. The customer then said, "You know, I can take care of you and your baby girl." At that point, I had completely had enough. I was once again speechless, but this time, I was able to walk away. I turned around and practically ran. I went directly into the management office, slamming the door shut, and I called my husband. My voice was shaking as I told him everything. Of course, he was like, "What the hell?" And he was absolutely furious. I went home early that night because I was so upset, so shaken. So, remember at the beginning of the story, when I shared that the company likes to move you to different stores? Well, shortly after that encounter, due to medical reasons, I was induced early and had my daughter. After my maternity leave was over in May, I was transferred to a much nicer store with normal customers. The relief was immense. I never had an encounter like that again with a customer, and thankfully, I never saw that man again. In March 2020, I got a new job with another organization, and I have been there since. To that creepy 50-year-old man who stalked me, followed me, and harassed me during my pregnancy, I hope you never do that to anyone else again, pregnant or not. If you are a woman, please speak up if anyone makes you feel uncomfortable. I truly wish I would have. Stay safe, everyone, especially if you work in retail. There really are some crazies out there, and sometimes the biggest threats are the ones you least expect, lurking in the aisles of your everyday life. This story takes place a little over 3 years ago, when I was 19 years old. My best friend and I were spending the day together, enjoying a shopping spree. We went to the closest mall to us, planning to grab some food and whatever else we might find that was worth splurging on. Everything was going great throughout the day so far. We had started our morning with breakfast and then spent a few hours browsing. I do not remember exactly what we did before this, but we ended up at the mall cafeteria for lunch. Now, for some context, the entire mall was pretty much dead. It was unusually quiet. Both my friend and I worked part-time jobs to help get through school. It was a weekday during November of 2019, so most people were at work or school. We were lucky enough to be off work and class for the day. Like I said, the entire mall was pretty much clear for us to enjoy it to ourselves, except for a few families with young children and some folks grabbing a quick lunch. The cafeteria there is very large, and it was populated by only my friend and I at this time, along with those few others scattered throughout the vast space. I remember sitting down with her at the far side of the food court. We chose a secluded spot so that when we were done eating, we could easily dump our trays and walk right over to the open stores we wanted to visit next. As we ate, chatting and laughing, I noticed a man approaching the cafeteria from the side of the mall that we were sitting closest to. At first, I did not really pay attention to him, because after all, it is a public place. People come and go. However, I grew overly cautious when the man then picked his place to sit. He chose a table that was only 3 or 4 tables away from us. Keep in mind, this cafeteria is very large. There were dozens of empty tables. He could have sat anywhere, even by the beautiful fireplace couch seating area, which was much more comfortable and inviting. But no, he chose a particularly close table to us. I shrugged it off, trying to rationalize it, as I did not want to assume the worst of a stranger just minding their own business. After a minute or so, I noticed that he was not minding his own business at all. I felt his eyes on us. It was a persistent, heavy gaze, and that is where they stayed. I tried not to look over too much, pretending to be engrossed in my conversation with my friend. But I could feel his gaze, and it felt like fire in my body, a burning sensation of being observed. 7 to 10 minutes went by without those creepy eyes leaving my body. He just sat there, motionless, staring. I did not mention anything to my friend right away, because the man was within hearing distance. I did not want to alarm her or give him any reason to react, so I just kept my cool. I figured he was just a lonely creep wanting to watch 2 beautiful young girls while they chatted and ate. It was not cool, but not necessarily sinister either, I told myself. I have enough knowledge about stalkers and creeps to know what to do in this situation, how to test the waters without putting myself directly in danger. Part of me wanted it to be nothing, and that we would just go about our day, shopping and laughing like usual, with no weirdos on our tail. But the other part of me was fully on edge and ready to take care of any danger we may be faced with. So, to test the strange waters, I said aloud, my voice clear and deliberate, "Hey, let's go get some Starbucks when we're done here, so that we have enough energy to continue shopping." My friend, oblivious to the underlying tension, readily agreed. Soon, we grabbed our trays to dispose of the food. As we stood up, the man at the nearby table also got up from his table. He began walking in the direction of the Starbucks, just as I predicted. We were walking behind him, maintaining a distance of about 20 feet for a bit. Then, just as I had anticipated, he walked right into the Starbucks. He went inside. The guy was probably in his mid-20s to early 30s. He was around 6 feet 3 inches tall, with bright red hair and a very slim build. He stood ahead of us in the short line, right before the counter. I got closer to him as he ordered, trying to overhear. "Hello, sir. What can I get you started for today?" asked the barista. Yeah, just give me that," he said in a low tone, pointing vaguely towards the first sweet treat he saw in the desserts case. Clearly, he was spending no time thinking about his order. He just wanted to be inside. The barista grabbed the cake and finished the transaction. Then, he just left. He did not even wait for his order. He just walked out. I was relieved to no longer see him, even after we ordered our drinks and made our way to the next few stores. I thought he was finally gone. Unfortunately, though, that is not the end of it. Honestly, I do not know how diligent I was being after that point. I was just glad he was gone. My guard lowered slightly. When we left the mall, I needed to pick up a few things for my mom from the Walmart across town. We drove there, and when we arrived, I started on my list, ready to begin the hunt for the items my mom needed. We eventually found ourselves in the kids' toy aisle. I was grabbing a few things for my niece for Christmas, looking for small gifts. I remember leaving my friend in the aisle while I went to explore the next one over for more options. As soon as I rounded the corner, my heart stopped. There, casually pretending to look at little girl toys, stood the guy from the mall. My breath hitched. I froze for probably 30 seconds, my mind unable to process the impossible coincidence. He saw me, and when we made eye contact for a moment, that chilling realization settled in. I immediately turned my back the other way. I grabbed my friend by the wrist, yanking her towards the front of the store with me without saying anything to her. I just pulled her, urgency in my grip. When I felt we had enough distance, I called my mom to ask her what to do. I spoke very loudly, almost shouting, explaining the situation so other shoppers around us could hear. I wanted witnesses. I wanted attention. She told us to check out as fast as possible and to pay attention to the other cars as we drove the 20 minutes back to my apartment. Thankfully, that was the end of it, and we never did see him again. God only knows what his intentions were, but I am certain they were not any kind of good. The moral of the story: always be vigilant and trust your gut. Not to toot my own horn, but if I was not with my friend, I am sure she would have ended up in a more terrifying situation. She is just not as paranoid as I am. Be safe, everyone, because you never know who is watching and where they might reappear. The world has a way of showing you its darker side when you least expect it. Having been recently divorced with 2 kids of elementary age, I decided to move halfway across the country to be closer to my family. It was a big leap, a fresh start, and I needed to find work quickly. I quickly landed a job as a manager of a retail store. The store mostly catered to factory workers, firefighters, policemen, and city employees, selling uniforms, boots, and workwear. The store was located in a plaza, and at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all the other shops and breakfast diners in the plaza would close. My store was the only one open until 6 o'clock in the evening. So, the plaza would become completely deserted. It was not so bad during the summer with the longer daylight hours. But in the winter months, when it would get dark by 6 o'clock, it could get a little creepy. The shadows lengthening and the empty parking lot feeling vast and isolated. I am not the type of person that scares easily. I have always been aware of my surroundings, a trait honed by life experiences, and I have always been very athletic, capable of handling myself physically if needed. Most of the time, I would close by myself. I became familiar with many of the regular customers who worked for the city. Everyone was very polite and friendly, and I rarely had issues. I even made one good friend who worked as a supervisor for the city. He would often bring his employees in for boots or uniforms that the city would supply for them every 6 months. He was a kind, reliable presence. There were also times where I could not leave the store for lunch, so he would often offer to bring me a burger, and we would sit and talk for a bit. Many times, he would drop by after 5 o'clock on his way home, or he would call just to chat. One day, about 15 minutes before closing, a man walked in the store. He was very tall and solidly built with a broad frame. He walked with a deliberate pace and then sat down on a bench near the entrance. I remembered seeing him earlier, standing across the street. He had been watching me as I walked to get something out of my SUV. He just watched me, a still, unblinking presence, as I went back into the store. A small knot of unease had formed then, but I had dismissed it. I started to ask him what kind of boots he was looking for, trying to be polite and helpful. But the conversation quickly took a dark turn. He started saying some very strange things that made me very uncomfortable. He told me how lonely he was, how bad he needed to be held, and that he wanted a hug. He said that if I gave him a hug, he would feel so much better. I did not acknowledge it. My blood ran cold. I knew I was in trouble. I immediately thought about my escape routes. If I ran towards the back door and did not make it, no one would hear me scream. The store was isolated, the plaza empty. To get to the front door, I had to get past him, and he was a big man, blocking the direct path. When he was talking, he had a fixed grin, a strange, unnatural smile that did not reach his eyes. I think he was trying to smile, but it just looked menacing. So, I started to think. I needed to keep him talking. I knew he was getting ready to make a move. His body language shifted subtly, a quiet tension in the air. With one hand under the counter, out of his sight, I slowly took the phone off the cradle. I discreetly hit a number on the store phone that would automatically call the last number that was called. It happened to be my friend, the city supervisor, who was on his way home. He answered. He heard a very weird conversation. He later told me a strange, muffled exchange. He could not really make out the man's voice or everything that was being said, but he got a really bad feeling. He automatically popped a U-turn and headed back for the store. At this point, I had been trying to calmly keep the conversation going for about 15 minutes. It seemed like everything was just going in slow motion. Every second felt like an hour. I knew, absolutely, if I told him that I needed to get out because I needed to close the store, that would have been a signal for him to get up and do whatever he was going to do. Because then he would know that no one was coming to help me close. And by this time, the store definitely should have been closed. I was trying to change the conversation, asking about his job, the weather, anything. But he kept telling me how lonely he was and looking towards the back of the store because it was where we kept the overstock. I just knew he was putting a plan together in his mind, envisioning what he would do once the store was truly empty. We both got very quiet. The air hung heavy between us. He still had that stupid grin on his face, but his eyes were not friendly. They were cold calculating. I do not know why I felt calm, but I definitely felt myself anticipating the worst. I can only describe it as the quiet before the storm, a dreadful calm that settled over me. He then stood up, slowly, his large form filling the space. He just looked at me, a silent, knowing stare. 10 seconds later, the door flew open. It burst inward with a rush of cold air, and in walked my friend. He was a little bit shorter than the man, but also wider and very muscular. He came and stood in front of the counter, his presence immediately filling the space. "Why are y'all still open?" he asked, his voice firm. "Shouldn't you be closed by now?" He then looked directly at the man standing there. "Sir, I think you need to go. The store's closed." The man's grin widened even more, a grotesque display of his inner frustration. He looked at me, then looked back at my friend. He never said a word. He just stood there for about 5 seconds, his eyes still calculating, then turned around slowly and finally walked out the door. I quickly locked the door behind him. My friend turned to me, his brow furrowed with concern. "What happened?" he asked. And that is when the tears just started to flow. All the adrenaline, all the fear poured out of me. My babies were in the back of my mind, a chilling thought of what could have happened. I knew it was going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight if my friend had not arrived. These things can happen quickly, and I think what actually saved me was that I assessed the situation. I did what I could to get help, and I did not panic. A physical confrontation was my last resort. Always trust your gut and stay alert. That night, I learned the true meaning of quick thinking and the immense value of a good friend. This happened back in 2017. I had just graduated high school, a fresh 18-year-old stepping into the adult world. My first real job was working in the lawn and garden section of my local Walmart. I was freshly 18, but certainly not naive. I had always been a fairly paranoid person, a trait that often led me to overthink. But in this case, I thank God that I am. It might have saved me. I was running the cash register, a routine task that day. I had noticed a man in his early to mid-50s behind the lady I was checking out. He had a big smile on his face, a wide, almost unnatural grin. I did not find this too strange though, as a lot of people either force a smile or frown when getting rung up in retail. When it was his turn, he kept that smile for the most part, and then he said, his voice a little too soft, "You have beautiful eyes." Now, working in retail, you tend to feel pressured to do and say nice things that you do not really want to. There is an unspoken rule of forced pleasantness. I said, "Thank you," my voice neutral, and took his payment. Then he asked me, his smile widening, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Usually, I would just say yes to things like this, a quick way to deter unwanted attention. But my coworker next to me knew the truth, and I did not trust her to keep her mouth shut. So, against my better judgment, I said no. His smile then got wider, almost predatory, and he asked, "Well, would you like one?" I handed him his receipt, my hand shaking slightly, and said, "No," my voice firm. He then took his items and left. I thought that was weird, very weird, but I just kept going on with my day, trying to dismiss the interaction as another strange retail encounter. Now, I generally do not think too much into things because I do not perceive myself as particularly attractive. I am just a regular person. Well, fast forward about a week, and I see him in a crowd at Walmart once more. He was in a different section, but he spotted me. He gave me that same big smile, the one that I was now finding increasingly creepy. It was too wide, too fixed. I began seeing him almost every day. No matter where I was in the store, in whatever department, I would see him. I kept my eye on him, trying to track his movements, while also giving him the benefit of the doubt. Lots of people shop there every day, I told myself, as there is nothing better to do where I live. Perhaps it was just a coincidence. During this time, I would work out after work, a routine I enjoyed. Not many people go to the gym at 10 o'clock at night, so it is pretty easy to see who is there. My gym had a pool, and the upper workout area overlooked the pool with large windows. I always ended my workout with a swim, a relaxing way to cool down. As I was doing some backstrokes, my body moving rhythmically through the water, I glanced up at the window. My heart leaped into my throat. I saw that same man from the store, his face pressed against the glass, staring down at me with that god-awful grin. I officially knew that this was no accident. This was deliberate. My body went cold. I calmly got out of the pool, trying not to show any panic. I rushed into the locker room, quickly getting changed, and went straight to my car. Luckily enough, they did not follow me from the gym. The relief was immense, but short-lived. After this, I started going on walks with a friend after work, hoping for safety in numbers. On my day off, we decided to go to a river in my town to walk, a peaceful, natural area. On our way back to her house, as we walked along the quiet road, I had noticed a car following us. It was not dark yet, and I could clearly see into their car. It was the same man. My stomach dropped. I did not want him knowing where she lived. So, I casually mentioned to her, "I'm going to take a detour drive to her house," implying a longer route. I took as many turns as I could, winding through the residential streets, before assuming he lost interest and quit following us. I then dropped her off and went home, my heart pounding. There were a few other times I would see him, glimpses in the distance, and managed to lose him. Each time was a fresh wave of fear and adrenaline. One day, when I was working again, he stopped me while I was walking to the break room. He asked if I had a boyfriend again. This time, without hesitation, I said yes, my voice firm and clear. I did not wait for a response. I just kept going, walking quickly away. I put in my 2 weeks' notice a few days later. I could not work there anymore with that constant threat. I have not seen him since. This may not be as intense as other stories, perhaps lacking dramatic confrontations or physical violence, but it was still definitely terrifying. It was a slow, creeping horror that eroded my sense of safety. Always be aware of your surroundings. Stalking can happen to anyone, no matter how unappealing you may think you are. It is not about attraction. It is about control, obsession, and a fundamental disregard for another person's boundaries. The constant vigilance, the feeling of being hunted, leaves a lasting scar. It taught me that sometimes the most unsettling threats are the ones that never overtly touch you, but merely watch, waiting from the shadows of everyday life. I was running a video store in a fairly sketchy part of Louisville, Kentucky. It was not the best neighborhood, but there was a police post right outside our strip mall almost 24/7. So, I felt fairly safe working the long, late hours alone. The constant presence of a patrol car, its lights occasionally flashing, was a small comfort. However, I did not live in the area, so I was not exactly street smart. I grew up in a quiet suburb, and the realities of a city like Louisville were quite new to me. I was working alone one afternoon. The store had not been open very long, and it was quiet. I was behind our large counter, a sturdy wooden structure that served as a barrier. Suddenly, a guy walks in, wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled tightly over his head. Now, I may not be street smart, but I have watched enough true crime to know that when someone comes into a store dressed like that in August, with 100 degrees temperatures outside, they are up to no good. It was a clear sign, a red flag flapping violently in my mind. As I moved behind the counter, discreetly positioning myself closer to where our aluminum baseball bat was located, he spoke. He asked for a certain movie. "It's in alphabetical order in the drama section," I say, my voice calm while pointing to the area. I could see a flash of frustration on his face. He wanted me to come out from behind the counter to be closer to him. A few seconds later, without even going to the section for the first movie, he asked for another movie. "It's in alphabetical order in the comedy section, like I said before." I say to him, my tone carefully neutral, letting him know there was no effing way I was coming out from behind this counter. I should mention our office has automatic locks, and you need a code to enter. It was located way steps away from me, hence the slight sarcasm and firmness in my response. I was not going to make it easy for him. Just then, this huge hulk of a man walks in. He was a regular customer, a mountain of a man, very familiar with the store. I knew him as Nads. I greet him with a smile, my eyes wide with relief. I slightly nodded in the would-be robber's direction, hoping Nads would pick up on my subtle cue. Nads goes right over in the section that the would-be robber was in. He looks the would-be robber right in the face with a look of pure intimidation, scanning him up and down. Nads' presence was a palpable force. Now here is the scary part. The would-be robber goes to leave, clearly scared and pissed that he did not get me alone, that his plan was foiled. He stops right at the door, turns back, looks me in the face, his eyes narrowed with malice, and then says, his voice a low, chilling threat, "I'll get you later." And then he leaves. Nads just looks at me and says, completely oblivious, That guy was up to no good. I'm standing there like, yeah, you think? Realizing he did not catch on to my cues at all. He had been my accidental savior, but completely unaware of the true danger. I excused myself and ran outside, my heart pounding, looking for the guy. But I did not see him. So, I ran to the police car nearby, the one that was usually always there. I gave the officer a description of the guy. I then looked into every store in the strip mall, frantically checking to make sure he was not trying to rob them as well. They got away. The police cruiser then started its rounds. But I can never thank Forensic Files enough for teaching this small country town girl in a big city what can happen to women like me if I fell for his ploy. It was a lesson learned not from experience, but from vigilance. Fast forward 2 days. The closest store to me in the strip mall had their morning shift come in to find that their night shift staff were zip-tied in the office. They had been robbed at gunpoint at closing, and they were there overnight tied up and terrified. My blood ran cold. The man's words, "I'll get you later," echoed in my mind. He did not get me, but he got someone else. I had tried warning everyone to be on alert on a conference call after my incident, but either I was not taken seriously or the information was not shared with the entire staff. The company's communication was often poor. I was transferred to a store in my area shortly after this, a safer location. So yeah, that is the scariest thing to happen to me in a decade of retail management. Needless to say, when our stores finally closed down, I got out of retail for good, and I think I made the right choice. The memory of that chilling threat and the subsequent robbery still serves as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers that can lurk in seemingly ordinary places, and how quickly a moment of perceived safety can turn into a nightmare. My first encounter with a stalker was when I worked in retail at a local grocery store, making subs in the deli department. For context, I am a female, and I was 18 at the time. It was my first real job, and I was still learning the ropes, navigating the world of customer service. This guy came in every single day. He always wore a trench coat and heavy boots, even if it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. His appearance alone was unusual and made him stand out. He was only creepy towards me, which I realized quickly because I was the only young woman working there at the time. The rest of the deli staff were men, all aged 18 plus, some much older. He definitely had some guts to act the way he did in front of everyone. Everyone I worked with would always warn me about him. They had noticed his strange behavior too. Some of my male co-workers, seeing him approach, would even offer to work in my place, stepping in front of me to serve him instead. They sensed something was off, just as I did. I was a smoker at the time, so he would occasionally catch me outside during my breaks. I would always thank God that the store's security cameras were pointed at the outdoor area, recording everything. I had the most eerie feelings about him, a prickle of unease that never left me when he was around. He actually made up a song all about my butt. He would hum it, sometimes sing it softly, whenever he was near me. It was incredibly unsettling and made my skin crawl. I had to report him to management. Thankfully, they took it seriously. They felt the need to ban him from the store. It was a huge relief when I was told he was no longer allowed on the premises. I never found out his name, but now, thinking back, I wish that I had asked. I wish that I had reported him to the police, because he's probably still out there being a stalker weirdo, targeting other young women. The thought of him still roaming free, repeating his unsettling behavior, is disturbing. Anyways, I used to work at Cinnabon in the Ocean County Mall in Toms River, New Jersey. If you are from here, you know the mall pretty much just sucks, and most stores go there to die. However, my manager had this store for quite some time, and he usually did well, especially during the holiday season. So, he managed to keep it going. For context, this particular incident happened when I was about 24 years old. I am ridiculously nice, overly nice, I think. And sometimes, maybe even flirtatious without even knowing it. It is just my natural demeanor. Working in retail, you kind of have to be, at least that is what I thought, a constant state of forced pleasantness. So, this one guy keeps coming in every single day. He's kind of like a nerdy comic book type with glasses. I wear glasses too, so I guess I do not know. Maybe I look like I'm into that type of stuff. Anyways, he comes to get Cinnabons one night. He starts going on and on about some comic book, talking very intensely about it. He explains how he just came up with the best concept ever for a fire mask/hood, and how he is going to try and sell it all over and get a patent for all this stuff. I am engaging with him because he is the customer, and that is what I am supposed to do. Also, my dad was a fireman, so I was kind of interested in the fire mask concept, to be honest. It felt like a safe topic. He eventually leaves, and all is fine. Well, he comes back for months and months on end, almost every single day. He always seeks me out, and I honestly did not know what to do or say. I knew something felt weird about it, a prickle of unease, but I could not really pinpoint what exactly it was. He felt harmless, and maybe he just wanted to be friends. He seems socially awkward, and I have a soft spot for that. Then, one day, my friend's car breaks down on the side of the road. And this guy, the Cinnabon customer, was apparently an engineer of some type. He just happened to be driving by, saw my friend in distress, and stopped to help. He managed to fix the car. All was good, and they were on their merry way. But now, I felt like an obligation to be nice to this creep. He had helped my friend. How could I now be rude to him? So, he keeps coming back. He gets a Cinnabon and an iced coffee, always the same order. He never leaves right away, ever. He always just stays to hang around, watching. Looking back, my fiancé would have probably kicked his butt if I had told him about this. But maybe that is why I did not say anything. I did not want him to be mad or feel like he needed to do anything about it at the time. Like I said, I was kind of a rebellious woman back then, wanting to handle things myself. One night though, he asked me to go out to his car with him to look at the fire mask. He said he had a prototype. And I, in my naive, overly nice way, said, "Yeah, sure, what the heck? What could this harmless person even do to me?" I reasoned. I have this power trip thing where sometimes I feel like I do not know. I am invisible. That bad things just do not happen to me. As I am getting ready to go outside, I turn to my coworker, keeping my voice low. "If I'm not back in 5 minutes, call security," I said. "And if I'm not back in 10 minutes, call the cops." It was a tiny lifeline, a small measure of safety I put in place. So, I get out to his car. I look at the fire mask. He explains it, and all is fine. He is polite, does not touch me. I walk back inside, and I felt a profound sense of relief come over me. I felt like I had just been touched by an angel in a strange, unsettling way. To be completely honest with you, I do not know what this guy's intentions were, but I feel like he had second-guessed himself for some reason and decided not to do whatever he was going to do. Flash forward like 2 years later. I had a baby, so I took some time off work to focus on being a mom. When I returned to work, he realized really quickly that I was back, and he started coming back to Cinnabon again. He started coming during the day even and asking about me. This is a family-owned business, so my mom works there, my aunt, my cousin, my sister, my brother, you name it. They were all aware of him now. So, as I said earlier, I own a cleaning business, and I had left some business cards on the register to get some people to take them and spread the word. Well, you guessed it. He got my business card. On it, he found my phone number, my email, and my Facebook. Literally, everything. He started texting me, telling me he has an awesome pool house and how he wanted me and all my friends to come by and play some poker and also have a drink and have a good time. We never did end up going, obviously, and I really do not know what would have happened if we did. I'm honestly afraid that he knows where I live now because of my business card. I hope I do not see him again. Now, even if he did not do anything malicious, he was still kind of weird with the way he did and went about things. Sometimes I feel like I am crazy about the whole situation, and maybe I was just being too paranoid. Maybe he really was just an oddball with no real bad intentions. But I do not know. I am still going to keep a guard up, just to be safe. It is a constant battle between dismissing it as harmless eccentricity and acknowledging the deep unease it caused. The lingering thought that he might know my address, that he might reappear, is a shadow that follows me even now. I will be using different names for the story, as the real people involved were covered in the media. Man, I do not know if they will ever find this, but here goes. This is the story of how one thing in my first ever job indirectly gave me anxiety, traumatized me, and also shattered my innocent view of the world. Before this happened, I thought that I was safe, and that nobody I cared about would ever get hurt over stupid things. How stupid and naive I was. In my first ever job out of high school, I worked for a big chain retail store. Let us call it Iris. Iris was a 24-hour superstore that never closed. To give a brief layout of the store that will help with the rest of the story later. The grocery part of the store, with registers 1 to 5 and 4 of the 8 self-checkout registers, was on the left. Then there was the liquor section and the vision center in the middle. And the clothing/home goods section were on the right side, along with registers 6 to 12 and the remaining 4 self-checkouts. I spent 8 years there. In all that time, the worst thing that I saw happen were drunks, occasional shoplifters, and the weirdly dressed weirdos and freaks that sometimes wandered through. Never anything violent or truly terrifying. I had many friends there due to my sweet personality, as people called it. They say I'm a true gold-hearted person. I really do not see it, but if they say it, I will let them believe it. I had a really good friend there, who I will call Cher. That is not her real name because she suffered enough as is, so I am using this alias instead. I really beg all of you to be respectful and try and understand why I'm using aliases. That will become apparent in the end. She was in her 50s, blonde, bubbly, but still very work-oriented. She was a regular mama bear towards me and many of the little honeys, as she liked to call us newer hires. I loved her to pieces, and I would often see her outside of work as well. Our family lived on a lake, so we would often go boating and see Cher and her family swimming at a sandbar about 5 miles from her house. We would wave to them from the boat, and often swim in the lake water with her grandkids, as well as her sweet dog, Biscotti. One really treasured those memories, because they would be some of the last time Cher and I would ever see each other in such a carefree way. There was another cashier I worked with often, named Jessie. She was tall, thin, around her early 30s, with pale brown hair and brown eyes. She had a soft, lilting voice and demeanor that made her seem angelic. Oh, if only people could see the real her, the true self she hid from the world. Maybe then this terrible thing would have never happened. About a week prior to the incident, I was having lunch in the back break room with Jessie. She had asked me out of the blue, as I was eating, "What do you think of Cher?" I looked up from the chicken fried rice that I had just gotten from the deli department. After swallowing my mouth full, I said, she's pretty cool. I really like her. Why? Jessie's face screwed up. Her features twisted into an expression that looked like something akin to anger or disdain. Then she simply replied, her voice cold and flat, "I hate her. I wish she were dead." I was shocked. My spoon clattered against my plate. Every time I was with Cher or took over for her breaks, she was very sweet and kind to me. She was undeserving of death at all. I told Jessie not to say such things and that nobody deserves death. She then gave me a sickly sweet smile, got up, then patted my head saying, "You're too cute and innocent. Never lose that, even if the world turns on you." As she walked away, I watched her go. My insides felt cold and I felt nauseous. I told the managers about what Jessie had said, but they just shrugged and told me she was only joking. Oh, I wish she had been. How I effing wish. It was August 14th, 2013. I remember the day it happened because it will forever be burned in my memory. I was on a bus trip with my mom, my grandma, and my other grandma, and my aunt. We were all riding on the bus, heading back home from up north where the trip had been. when my mom gets a text on her phone from my uncle, her youngest brother. The text read, "Hey, is Dusk with you?" Confused, my mom replied back with, "Yes, she is. Why? What's going on?" My uncle replied back 10 seconds later with, "No reason." Never mind. What the hell? I asked my mom what my uncle had said, and she handed me the phone. I looked at the conversation and showed it to Grandma. She told me to call my uncle to get the reasoning, but then my aunt chimed in and she said that we would get answers once we got home. The tension was palpable, that they were trying to shield me. When we arrived at the pickup spot, my uncle was waiting to take me, Grandma, and Mom back to Grandma's house where our car was, while my auntie was taking the other Grandma home. When we met up with my uncle, he told us, his voice grave, someone had shot a cashier in my store. I was shocked, along with my mom and Grandma. My mind immediately went to the worst. I then asked my uncle who did it, but he was very vague about it, only shaking his head and saying he could not say. When we arrived at Grandma's house, Mom and Grandma sat in the garage to have a drink together and talk about random things. I went into the house to watch some television, trying to distract myself. While doing some channel surfing, I then saw a news report on the shooting, and what I saw and heard shocked me to my core. There was a mugshot of Jesse on the screen, and the victim was Cher. I screamed. I screamed so loud that my mom and Grandma came running to see if I was okay. I was stunned. Jessie had said Cher deserved to die, and she actually accomplished what she said. My mind reeled. I was stunned. I had been right for months. Jessie had been giving Cher dirty looks and saying random things like, she should be dead. Why is she still here? And if nobody will do it, then I should. In the days that followed, I was pretty messed up. I barely ate. Sleep was nearly non-existent. I felt numb to everything. The images replayed in my mind. Many of my coworkers were dealing badly with it too, so our manager brought in a grief counselor to try and help us sort through everything. I went 3 days after the shooting, and I told the counselor through tears that I felt guilty for not doing more to perhaps protect Cher. He told me that I was just experiencing survivor's guilt or something like that. I really cannot remember everything he told me. My mind was a fog of grief and confusion. On April 23rd, 2015, Jesse was sentenced to 30 years for attempted first-degree murder. I did not attend the trial, but I learned a few things about Jesse during the days and weeks that followed. Jesse had delusions that she was being tailed by the mafia or some drug cartel, and that Cher was part of the cartel. She had 3 little boys with her husband, the youngest of the 3 having severe mental disabilities and needing constant care. This hurt the most, because not only did Jessie screw up her own life, but also the life of her husband, who I had met many times in the store while working, and those sweet kids as well. I never met them, but oh God, those poor sweet ones. And in her store locker, there was 4 boxes of ammo and another gun, which meant a lot of people think this. Cher was not her only target. And finally, she had asked her husband just a few days prior to the shooting, where do I shoot a person if I want to do the most damage? Fortunately, Cher survived. But she was never the same after that. And neither was I. My innocent thoughts of how everything would be okay was shattered. I was not very forthcoming to people anymore, and I lived with that guilt for a while. And so, I realized that living stuck in that moment was not living. I cut all ties to Jessie and kept positive until the day I left that store. I am doing much better now, but my mind sometimes drifts to that horrible day and that former friend of mine that changed my life with a single gunshot. I sometimes still cannot believe it. I was working on my first ever job in retail. I was around 20 years old. It was a busy morning, around 9 o'clock, somewhere mid-December, hence why I was so busy. The holiday rush was in full swing, and the store was bustling. I was working the checkouts, as per usual, scanning items, ringing up customers, and all that jazz. About an hour into my shift, I was serving an elderly man who had bought a handful of items. After giving him a subtotal, another guy behind him, smelling strongly of booze, stretched out his arm, handing me cash. He completely bypassed the elderly man. I kindly told him that I was not serving him. I was serving the man in front of him. I looked down and I saw that he was buying some cheap, knockoff branded Baileys, some hard liquor. And of course, I figured out this guy was completely wasted. His eyes were glazed over, his movements unsteady. Just as I was taking payment from the elderly man, I was planning in my head. I was going to tell the next guy that I could not sell alcohol to him as he was already clearly drunk. This was my first job, and I had never really encountered anything like this before. My mind raced through the company policy, wondering how to handle it. So, I finished serving the elderly customer, handing him his receipt and change. Now, it was time to deal with the drunk guy. I looked around in hopes to find another colleague or my manager, but not one in sight was available to help. I was on my own. So, I looked at the man, ready to deliver my practiced refusal. But just before I opened my mouth, I felt what felt like someone grabbed a fistful of my hair from behind, pulling it taut. Then something sharp poked me in the back, just below my shoulder blade. And of course, a man whispered in my ear, his breath hot and reeking of alcohol. "Hey, serve my mate," he said, his voice low and menacing. He then pushed what I was assuming was a knife harder into my back. The sharp point pressed against my skin. Now, in complete shock, I said nothing. My mind went blank. My body froze. I simply scanned the bottle, took the cash he offered, and they were gone, disappearing into the crowd of shoppers. I turned quickly to my colleague working the checkouts behind me, hoping she had seen something, anything. But all she did was look at me and asked if I was okay, completely unaware of what just happened. She had seen nothing. Then it was time for my break. As I walked towards the staff room, I saw my manager pass by. I rushed over to him, my voice trembling as I quickly told him what just happened. All he did was laugh at me because he thought I was joking. "That's a good one," he chuckled. But then, he criticized me for selling alcohol to someone under the influence. "You know better than that," he scolded. Whatever that sharp object was that was in my back, it cut me. Before my break, I could feel blood running down my back, warm and sticky, and I was sore. But of course, he did not see the blood as my uniform was black. I screamed, "It's true though." "It happened," I yelled, my voice raw with disbelief and pain. I turned around and lifted my hair, as I have very long hair, trying to show him the wound. "Why don't you lift up my shirt or get one of the female workers to do it? I'm telling you, this guy effing sliced me." But the manager just responded back with a dismissive wave. "Oh no, I don't want to see you lift up your shirt," he said, staring at his phone, already walking away. He simply brushed me off, uninterested in my injury or my terror. Wow, I did not return to finish my shift. I sneaked out of the store, my heart pounding, took a taxi, and went home. My mom was horrified. She cleaned up my back and dressed it carefully, her face etched with concern. She then called my work the next morning to tell them I would not be returning. She explained that it was because of the manager's incompetence to take action when I could have almost been stabbed over a stupid bottle of alcohol. I never went back. That experience, the cold steel against my skin, the dismissive laughter of my manager, and the feeling of complete vulnerability left a lasting mark. It taught me a harsh lesson about trusting my instincts and standing up for my own safety, even when no one else would believe me. The memory of that sharp object against my back and the feeling of the blood still sends a shiver down my spine. For some context, I am a 16-year-old Hispanic girl. I used to work at a local grocery store that is super popular in my area. It is a bustling place, always full of people. I have had many encounters that spook me there, but this one takes the cake. I was working my 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night shift, which I usually enjoy. During the night hours, it tends to be quiet, a calm descending over the store. Whenever it is quiet, I usually fix the bread aisle or the wine and beer section, organizing shelves and restocking. This particular night, however, I had just finished up fixing the bread aisle, making sure everything was neat. Then, I was sent back to the register. It was late, and only me and this other girl were the only cashiers working. There was only one male manager on duty, who I will call Zach. Zach was really the only manager who seemed to care about me. I had told him about the harassment that I had gotten in the past from other customers, so he was very vigilant of the customers I handled. He would often cast quick glances my way, a silent reassurance. Anyways, I was standing at the end of my lane, waiting for someone to cash out. The store was mostly empty, the silence occasionally broken by the hum of the refrigerators. This man then came up to us, pushing a cart. I noticed he was only carrying a ton of wine bottles. It was a ridiculous amount, which was not too strange for our store, but it was kind of funny to see him with such a mountain of glass. The first thing that I found odd was the way that he acted. He seemed way too happy and energetic for this time of night. It was late, most people were tired, but he was practically bouncing. I did not think too much into it at first. So, which lane should I go to? The man then asked, his voice in the most creepy tone I have ever heard. It was sing-songy, almost like a child's, but deep and unsettling. He looked straight at me with a really big smile, his eyes wide and fixed. Then he said, "You know, I think I'll pick you. I have really severe anxiety." So, when he said that, my heart started racing, a frantic drumbeat in my chest. But I just gave him a fake smile and then a nervous, awkward laugh, trying to play it off as a joke. As I was checking him out, he leaned into my area, invading my personal space. He stared me down with a smile that almost looked impossibly big, stretching his lips in a way that seemed unnatural. Zach, my manager, noticed I was uncomfortable. He immediately came over and positioned himself behind me, acting as a silent barrier. "You really have the prettiest eyes," the man said, his gaze fixed on mine. I just smiled weakly and said, "Thank you." I noticed that he then looked at my hands. I have long acrylic nails, and I am pretty much known for them. They are distinctive. I am already kind of used to customers commenting on them, usually about how long they are or how I manage to do things with them. So, I was already kind of expecting him to say something about how long they were. But instead, he said, "Wow, your nails are so long. I bet you're an amazing back scratcher." That caught me completely off guard. My breath hitched. But I just sat back, my voice surprisingly steady. "Yeah, my boyfriend thinks so." I was hoping that bringing up my boyfriend would make him back off. But no, when I said that, his smile got even bigger. His eyes gleamed. "Maybe you should give me a sample of it," he said, his voice dropping to a low, suggestive tone. I just fake laughed, a sound that felt hollow, and looked back down at the scanner, trying to avoid his gaze. Zach had tried talking to the man, asking him about his purchases, trying to redirect his attention. But his eyes were totally fixated on me, and whenever he did say something to Zach, it was always about me. My anxiety was getting so bad. I could feel a panic attack coming, which is really common for me. But my attacks are so severe to the point where I actually stop breathing. I knew I had to calm myself down really quickly. So, I shot Zach a quick glance, a silent plea for help. But he did not look at me directly. He just kept looking at the man, trying to control the situation. I finished checking him out, and I was getting so relieved that he would finally be leaving. But not as soon as I thought. I handed him the bag of wine bottles and told him to have a good night. He smirked at me, his eyes still gleaming. He went up to Zach, who was still standing behind me, and then said, "She has such pretty eyes, doesn't she? She's so pretty. I need to stand back before I end up doing something to her." He began to move closer to me. I was paralyzed in fear. My body would not respond. I tried to move, to step back, but I could not. I felt the panic attack starting to come, my throat tightening. But then Zach stepped in front of me, placing himself between me and the man. He tried to wave him towards the front door, speaking calmly but firmly, trying to get him out. And to my horror, instead of leaving, the man just stood there. He went past the automatic doors, but remained, watching me work from behind the glass. When I turned around, I saw that he was staring right at my butt. I got so sick to my stomach that I had to leave my register and sit down. I could not breathe. Once the man finally left, Zach came over to me. He told me to call my mom and tell her to come pick me up early because he knew I was starting to get the attack. She picked me up and I told her what happened. Being the protective Puerto Rican mom that she is, she almost made a U-turn to go back and find him. I told her not to though, because he already left and beating the heck out of him really would not solve anything. When I finally arrived home, I told my boyfriend. He was really pissed off, but he also knew about all the other issues I had as well. The string of uncomfortable encounters. He just wanted to make sure I was okay. Luckily, I never saw that man again, and I quit that job months later due to health reasons. Needless to say, I really hope that I never have to deal with someone like that ever again. The memory of his chilling words and his impossibly wide smile still haunts me, a stark reminder of the hidden dangers in everyday life. Back in the 90s, I worked for a big box hardware store. This was long before the Me Too movement, a time when workplace boundaries were often ignored, and what we now recognize as harassment was simply accepted as the way things are. That sort of work environment was very testosterone-filled. Even the managers were like this, participating in or overlooking inappropriate behavior. Sexual harassment was just really common, and the coworkers thought nothing of it. I worked for this company for 10 long years. One of the store managers, a man much older than me, once told me I had a nice butt. I was young, just starting out, and I did not know how to react to such a statement. My face burned, but I just mumbled something and walked away. Not only was sexual harassment rampant, abuse from customers was a daily occurrence. This was because the company's policy was to always make the customer happy, no matter what. We had a very liberal return policy and would often give cash returns on merchandise without a receipt. Our Friday and Saturday evenings were the busiest times for returns, especially for the addicts who would come in, trying to get cash for stolen or old items. I have two occurrences to share, one of customer abuse and one of sexual harassment. One day, I refused to take back a defective garbage disposal. The brand had a manufacturer's date stamped clearly on the item, and this particular disposal was disgusting, covered in grime and reeking. When I looked at the date, it was over 5 years old. I told the customer, "I'm sorry, but I can't take this back without a receipt, and it's also very old." Of course, he did not have a receipt. I gave him back his item, and he was enraged. He was so enraged that he waited at the front door for about an hour, just staring at me and mouthing threats to me. This was at the returns desk, which was right at the entrance, so I could see him clearly, his eyes burning into me. I finally called loss prevention to have him removed. We were very busy, and again, I was in my early 20s, and I did not know how to handle this. I feared that not taking back this ancient disposal would affect my job. Loss prevention said I did the right thing, since this person frequented the returns counter with various items to get cash. Now, under the sexual harassment, when a good-looking woman would walk into the store, associates would always pass this along to each other via their walkie-talkies. "Got a live one in lumber," they would say, or "beautiful woman in plumbing." And then they would swarm to the poor woman, ignoring all their duties, asking if she needed help. They would follow her around the store, ignoring all the other customers in their departments, just to get a good look at a hot girl. It was a common, disturbing practice. One time, I was asked by 2 male customers to get some tile grout from the top shelf of the racking. This required me to climb the tall ladder to get it, which I did, carefully ascending the rungs. When I came back down to give it to them, they then told me, their faces smirking, "Yeah, we didn't need the grout. We just wanted to see you climb the ladder." I was really pissed and humiliated, my face flushing hot with anger and shame. But with that sort of culture being accepted all around there, who could I really complain to? Who would believe me? Who would care? The most creepiest thing happened to me when I worked in RTV, which stood for Return to Vendor. It was my job to give the store credit for defective merchandise, so we did not eat the cost ourselves. All the defective merchandise was stored in a really large cage next to the receiving department, a secluded area. Vendors would visit regularly to inspect the defective items and say, "Yes, I give credit for this," or "No, I won't." One day, a millwork vendor came in. We were on good terms because I had worked with him many times before. He was a nice guy, middle-aged, and he did not really give any creeper vibes at all. He said that he would give me credit for all the molding that I had in the cage. I was busy printing up the paperwork. My back was towards him, focused on the task. When I turned to say, "Okay, great, thanks," I stopped dead. This man had his penis fully out of his pants, standing there, exposed. I felt faint. My stomach lurched. I pretended not to see anything. My mind screamed, but my body moved on its own. I handed him his paperwork for signature without turning around, keeping my gaze fixed on the paper. He took it, signed it, and gave it back to me. Then he left. I told my store manager immediately. I explained everything, my voice shaking, and his reply was a casual chuckle. Then he said, "Well, what do you expect?" His words were a punch to the gut. For reference, I had done some print ads for the company, so I was considered a good-looking girl, which perhaps contributed to his dismissive attitude. I called the vendor's company and reported it. I was determined. They said they would look into it, but I never heard back. The silence was deafening. It was not until he did it to a cashier, a younger, more vulnerable woman, that they believed me. He got to keep his job. He was just moved to a different area and was not allowed in our store anymore. The injustice was infuriating. Harassment continued in its various forms, a constant low-level hum of discomfort, so I eventually left the company. I really hoped they fixed this problem because it was very toxic. It was my first real job and the learning experience that taught me invaluable lessons about self-worth and boundaries. I will never put up with that sort of treatment ever again. I now have a degree and a really great job that lets me make my own schedule. If I get any weirdness, if I feel uncomfortable with someone, I am free to say that I do not want to see this person anymore. And thankfully, my current employers are very understanding. The contrast is stark, and the peace of mind is priceless. The memories of that decade still linger, a constant reminder of how far I have come and how important it is to stand up for yourself.